Good morning. It is Friday, November 1st, 2019. It is 59 degrees. It's going to get colder today. Get warmer first, and then it will get colder. Welcome to Radio Westchester here. We are the station at the station. Marrone in the Morning is the name of the show. I am Bob Marrone. Here are our headlines today. Cynthia Arce was sentenced for killing her daughter. You remember that issue about almost 18 months ago. One wonders, though, why the police and EMT have seemed to skate on that issue. A suspected computer issue puts White Plains High School into lockdown. The students were dismissed. We'll tell you about it. Donald Trump, well, he made his official address Florida yesterday. That's about those 29 electoral votes, probably. A 9-year-old trick-or-treater was struck by a tree limb in powerful winds. And the Democrats are moving forward to the next step with impeachment. Those stories and a lot more coming up right here on Radio Westchester. Let's get to those stories. Once again, good morning. A Marrone woman was sentenced yesterday to 25 years to life in prison. Why doesn't she go away for life without parole? 25 years is nothing. Wait until those of you who are younger get to be 60 or 65. 25 years is a blink of an eye. At any rate, she was convicted to 25 years for killing her 2.5-year-old daughter last year. Now, the judge had really something to say. Cynthia Arce is in a special category of evil for killing her daughter. Gabriel Boyd, State Supreme Court Justice Barry Warhit, noted this yesterday as he sentenced the 30-year-old in Westchester County. Gabriel's father, Stephen Boyd, spent most of his victim impact statement addressing Arce, who he called an evil, selfish baby killer. The couple had shared custody of Gabriella, who lived with her mother and maternal grandmother. But on the day before the killing, on April 28, 2018, Boyd had obtained a court order granting him custody because of concerns Arce posed a danger to herself. Now, police would not enforce the order. The next morning, Arce killed Gabriella after telling Boyd the girl was too sick to have her weekly visit. At any rate, Arce declined to speak before she was sentenced, which Boyd later told reporters was probably a good thing because he suspects she would have only said disparaging things. Her lawyer, Jeffrey Chartier, also did not speak before the sentencing was imposed. Later, he would say only that Arce's acceptance of responsibility should allow the hearing to begin. And we still hope to hear or see or learn about the second phase of that investigation, which was, and maybe it was no one individually, but the Kafkaesque confusion among the judge, social services, the police department, all contributed to the death of this young woman. And one of the things we like to do here at Radio Westchester is follow up on these stories. We will not give up, we promise you. A possible computer error led to a massive police response right before dismissal time at White Plains High School yesterday. This in Aloha this morning. The school went into lockdown around 1:15 p.m. and was lifted around 2:45. And by that time, School Superintendent Joseph Rica and Public Safety Commissioner David Chong told police that it was a false alarm and everyone was safe. But still, how did this happen? The White Plains City School District continually conducts drills of both lockdown and other protocols. Our staff and students are well trained, they said, but right now they're trying to figure out how the alarm was triggered. Quite frankly, nobody knows yet. When we know, you'll know. Well, Governor Andrew Cuomo is not relenting President Donald Trump's decision to change his residency, but in fact, he did. He actually said good riddance. That's just descending to the same level as your opponent. But the New York Times reported yesterday that Trump, a Republican, and First Lady Melania Trump filed separate declarations of domicile in Florida last month, a legal move that shifts his residency from Manhattan to his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, and that is his official permanent resident. And Trump confirmed the move in a series of tweets last night, criticizing state leaders for what he said was unfair treatment. And here's a quote from the president. I cherish New York and the people of New York and always will, but unfortunately, despite the fact that I pay millions of dollars in city, state, and local taxes each year, I have been treated very badly by the political leaders of both city and state. This last night, as you know, we had lots of high winds, although the weather did give us the break that we had hoped for so that our young folks could go out and trick or treat, and some of you older folks as well. But powerful winds, though, did create a frightening Halloween for some trick-or-treaters. And one right here in New Rochelle, police say a 9-year-old girl was with a group of adults when she was struck by a large tree limb. This in Lohud today. It happened around, News 12, excuse me. It happened around 6:30 p.m. on Maywood Road in the Beachmont Woods neighborhood. There is no word yet on her condition. It is 6:13. The rash of hate crimes seen throughout the lower Hudson Valley continued in Ossining on Thursday. A swastika and racial slur were found on a bathroom wall in Ossining High School. Detectives are working closely with the school district to investigate the incident. We'll have something to say about that in a little while. High school kids do stupid things. They always have. They always will. And a kid that does something like this ought to be called to account quickly and corrected. But we need to be very careful about the difference between some anti-Semites and white supremacists and all the rest of it, separating those from kids just being jackasses, quite frankly. It is 6:14. This out of News 12 this morning. The family of a woman who's allegedly beaten to death by her boyfriend says she pretended like nothing happened. Wow, well, he pretended like nothing happened. Police say Deborah Waldinger was brutally beaten to death by her boyfriend, Luis Rondon, in her New Windsor apartment. She was found dead by maintenance workers just days after her last phone call with her mom. The family says what shocked them the most was how Rondon acted after her death. They say he called the family from California the day they found out she was dead and pretended like nothing happened. To which I say, why is that a surprise? He was trying to get away with it. Bit of a sociopath maybe. All righty, speaking of News 12, one of our sources here, watch the dial. For those of you who have Fios, that is, News 12 is coming to Verizon Fios sooner than expected, just a few days from now on November 4th. Verizon and News 12's parent, Altice USA, won't comment officially, but employees got the memo. An email to News 12 staffers said the Long Island-based hyper-local news, and they put that in quotes, outlet would join the Fios lineup the day before the November 5 local elections. Verizon announced in August that come November 16, it will shutter its local news channel, Fios One News, walking away from its 10-year contract with Rybrook RNN-TV. At any rate, now news bureaus, et cetera, have been closed in Westchester, Long Island, and New Jersey. The expiring contract takes with it 150 jobs. Now, I would say this, though. We like News 12 here, and we like the people that work there. And they were a great service in Westchester. However, a lot of the stuff is done out of Long Island, and occasionally we see on News 12 faces that we've never seen before and sometimes never see again. But we got to take what we can, and that's one of the reasons that Radio Westchester is right here in the train station. We need more local media, not less. But our hearts go out to the people who lost their jobs. This is a tough business to make a living in. Speaking of making a living in food, did you know that today is National Vegan Day? So I want you all to go out, those of you who are vegans, and get your soy and whatever it is else you eat, your salad pizza. Oh, my God, salad pizza. Whatever it is, actually good for you. I heard it's healthy. Maybe I'll do it one day. But in honor of Vegan Day, I'm going to have a steak. All righty, let's take a look at the weather. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC. Right now, we have a wind advisory in effect, and I said 56 before. It's 46, excuse me. I read it somewhat incorrectly. It's 46 degrees. Going to get up to 55 today. No chance of rain. Zip, zero, none. But it's going to be windy, sunny and windy, almost 10,000. Actually, they're saying now 30 miles an hour plus gusts are possible. Tonight, clear skies. It's going to get down to 34, and it could be a little slippery. So keep your eye on that. Tomorrow, mostly sunny skies. The temperature getting up to 52 during the day. Sunday, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 51 degrees. And our programs this morning are supported by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Also, Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Khan. Dominic's Cigars, who will be sponsoring today Jake's Picks of the Week, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Don't forget, we're still in the midst of early voting, and for those of you who want to get out, maybe you'll get out of work early today and vote today, the polls are open from 8 to 4, and they tend to be in the city halls. We'll take the two closest to us here in New Rochelle. You can go to 90 Buford Place, and you can vote there. That's 90 Buford Place. It's the back door, really, of City Hall. And that will also be available, that is early voting, tomorrow. Today's November 1st, by the way. Tomorrow, November 2nd, Sunday, November 3rd. Now, tomorrow it's 12 to 5. They have weekend hours, 12 to 5. Same thing Sunday, November 3rd. There will be no voting on Monday the 4th. And then finally, Election Day. And it's kind of odd. This is really all like Election Day, isn't it? And we have some candidates coming on today. Most importantly, Martha Lopez will be with us about 7:20 this morning. Then we're going to talk with, do some sports, and then talk with Janelle Albritton from the Mount Vernon Post. Dr. Victor Sternberg's with us today. Hezi Aris from the Yonkers Tribune. Let's take a look at some of the other items that are making news today. I really want to go back to the swastika thing. I'm concerned about it. Now, as a parent, a grandparent, citizen, someone who is a supporter of the whole notion of the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, that never again. In fact, we're working on a radio show dedicated to that because we don't want people to forget what happened in the Holocaust and the evolution of anti-Semitism. But it's become fashionable. Every time some idiot high school kids post something, we make it news, and we do have to make it news. These kids need to learn that that is not something that's not funny. It's not something that they should do. And frankly, we don't want to hear about their petty, inane, and uneducated, because they're young and naive, thoughts or opinions that will, when they're 21, they're going to look back and say, oh my God, what an idiot I was. We need to be very careful about this. Let's not, we need to correct these kids. We need to tell them this is serious business. But I don't know that we should be treating them like criminals just yet, if they're high school students. Again, harsh reality, pointing to maybe a little couple of days off from school to think about it. But let's be very careful with that, at least in my view. There's an election coming up this week, as you know, but there's also an election coming up next year. But try and remember the election on Tuesday. These off years, folks, become coin flips. People you didn't want to, well, that's how we got Ocasio, by the way. People who don't come out to vote get hoodwinked. People who've been in office for a long time and have these jobs that seem to be totally safe, they wind up getting beat. We have people who get elected who aren't qualified. We've got to get out and vote. And I know we're all proclaiming it. I'm yelling it here, and you're probably sick of it. But we really need to get out and vote. So please keep in mind the early voting. But with no marquee races in the ballot this year, and this is a story out of LoHub, the only local seats up for grabs, with only a few of them, many are fixated on 2020. And hence this next issue. It is so hard to separate. And whether you are pro-Trump, anti-Trump, independent, don't know what to believe, There are things that are essence, things that really happened. The Russians really did hack our election. The president did make some good efforts with Korea. The economy is doing well in terms of jobs, but it looks like we may be headed to a recession. Whether it's a crime or not that involves impeachment, the president did establish a quid pro quo, and there was a bit of, for lack of a better word, I don't want to use extortion, but hey, you're not getting your money, or, we've got money for you, but, I need this favor. Interpret it any way you want. But what both sides do is just totally harden their positions. The Democrats are saying to themselves, we know the Senate's not going to vote to impeach this guy. See, I'd like to think they were doing it out of love of country. We know they're not going to impeach this guy, but let's get all this information out and screw him when it comes election time. We don't like him. We don't like the way he is. We don't like the way he acts. Now, the president, breaking laws, folks, it's okay to be a jerk. The president's a jerk, and I don't mean this in an unkind way. I'm trying to make a point. He's an oaf. He's inarticulate. But he also he's an alpha male. He makes decisions. The company hasn't exploded. The country will blow up. But he's a very easy guy to make a target out of. Makes it easy because of the way he tweets and the things he says. But does that mean he should be impeached? That's arguable. Not for those things, but it probably is debatable whether he should be impeached for asking a foreign government to interfere in our elections. But if you look at the paper, one group's calling it a witch hunt, a scam. It's ridiculous. Well, that's ridiculous. And honest people know it. But a lot of honest people know it and don't care. A lot of honest people just want him to win. They want him to stay in office no matter what he does. And we need to ask ourselves why. Well, John Podhoretz, he wrote an interesting piece today, and he tried to cover that. He called the serious and the silly. So, and he's right. So, and now the only one who made any sense to me so far was Nancy Pelosi, and when she said, I don't know that it's worth, let me get this. There it is, as a call coming in. I don't know that it's worth impeaching the president if we can't get bipartisan. We'll be right with you. If we can't get bipartisan support. And we can't have an impeachment with one-sided support. We cannot. And I don't know. Anyway, here's my point, and I don't know that I'm making it very articulately. It's so hard to get to the truth because of the extreme positions that both sides have taken. We can't have, even in the impeachment of President Clinton, there were some Democrats that went along. There are no Republicans going along with this, and Nancy Pelosi must be pulling her hair out. Just one moment, caller or so. But nonetheless, the GOP is calling it a sham. It's not a sham. It may be a sham in the sense that the Democrats don't care what's true and what's not. They just want to impeach him or besmirch him for when we get to the election. But there is an underlying truth here, and it behoves all of us to try and figure out what the hell it is. All righty, it's 6:25. This is Radio Westchester. We are live at the train station. Anthony's on the phone. Let's say good morning to Anthony. Good morning, Anthony.
Hey, Bobby. How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm not doing too well with your opening monologue, as usual.
Well, but that's what don't you like?
The fact that you're basically hanging the president. You've decided that he did something wrong.
Well, yeah, but I don't know that it's impeachable, though. I've said that.
No. But my point is, this is the problem I have. The rules change just for this president. Let's mix in a little fact with your opinion, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Fact one, January of this year, Nancy Pelosi changed the rules on whistleblowers to allow hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
Fact two, Nancy Pelosi changed deposition regulations in that no member of Congress had to be present when depositions were taken.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that was done?
So they can do exactly what they're doing and do stuff behind closed doors and use hearsay. But that's, Anthony, see, the tone of my monologue is not to say what the president or to happen to the president. My tone is exactly this, that we can't tell the bullspit on either side from what really happened. So what
How
I'm
can
saying...
you say we can't tell the bullspit when you see how it was set up to try to entrap the current president? Same thing with the laws in New York. They were manipulated. The president never had to give his tax returns before, so they changed the law
I'm sure
on
they
the
did.
sitting president.
I'm sure they did, but my point is, underlying all of this, those kinds of activities by the Democrats and the Republicans calling it a scam. Let's get to the essence, and that's what I was trying to do, and maybe not articulately today. Do you think that there was an implied quid pro quo? Do you did the president?
Now, see, this is what I love.
You.
This is what I love. Wait. I'm going to answer you. You ever know me not to answer you?
Well, that's true. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
The key word that you want to use is implied. Okay. So I'll say this. If indeed he's convicted of an implied quid pro quo,
yeah,
then what do we do with Biden, who on tape threatened to withhold the aid unless the investigation into the company that his son was on the board of was stopped?
You know what? We're not talking about the law because I agree with what you're saying, but
Not
does
the
it
law.
mean...
No, this is not the law.
No, but that's what I'm getting at.
To you, you can't live in a glass house and throw stones.
No, well, you can, and that's the sad part.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
What do you do? Do you go back and you shoot him, or you just say, well, other people did it, so the president... In other words, I'm asking you, Anthony.
You know what you say?
I'm
you
asking
know what you say? We allowed it then.
No,
we have to allow a lesser thing right now.
But right
That's what
now,
you say.
yes, but you know who gets to do that? The Senate does. That's my point. The
Bob,
Senate gets to do it.
You admitted 2 minutes ago that it's going nowhere in the Senate.
Yes.
So this is an exercise in futility that's only going to waste tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer dollars that could go for infrastructure
Anthony,
repair.
let me infuriate you further. It just like Benghazi. People see smoke and they go after it. But see, one thing that you're avoiding...
Let me tell you something, partner. Here's where I lose all respect for you. The minute you try to equate when 4 Americans were brutally killed with what's going on now, you need to get your head examined.
How come...
You need to get your head examined.
Anthony, how come there were no indictments or anything coming out of that after we had a Republican Senate? See, you missed my point. I'm not saying... I don't know what... We'll never know what happened in Benghazi.
I got your point.
No, my point is...
The parallel is not there.
No,
the parallel is not there.
Yes, it is. The parallel is taking any excuse you can, any issue that you can, and going after the opposition and wasting millions.
So you're calling the death of 4 Americans that were helplessly deserted in a foreign country, the same thing as going after a sitting president who had, according to you, an implied quid pro quo.
Well, because I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. We won't know until all of it comes out publicly, Anthony. Yes, I am, and because
Bob,
you can focus
Bob.
on the death, Anthony. Let me ask you. You haven't answered the question. No, you haven't answered the question yet.
While the Russia investigation was going on, Schiff said he had hard evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Mueller report came out. Mueller punted. Did Schiff pick up the ball and come up with his hard evidence? No. Schiff said we have a whistleblower.
Yes, but
now all of a sudden we don't need the whistleblower. Well, let me ask you a question.
Anthony, but you see, you're
we now know who the whistleblower is.
Anthony, you're nitpicking at this though because you haven't answered the fundamental question. What you're doing is dismissing it because other people have done it, which I believe. I don't disagree with you on that, which I believe.
Well, where was your outrage then, Bob?
I wasn't even aware that he did it. I wasn't aware of what Biden did. I don't.
You weren't aware? There's a tape of it.
There's
a tape of it.
Yes, it's coming out now, but I wasn't aware he did that at the time.
Bob. How do you think the tape resurfaced?
Anthony, it may have been out, but it wasn't in the news. It wasn't something that made a lot of headlines. The vice president,
now you got to the heart of the matter. How come the news doesn't report equally on both sides? Now you made my point.
I'm making your point about the fact that we don't always treat all things the same, but I can assure you that if Obama did it, we would have known about it. See, where you don't give me enough credit.
So it's okay for the vice president to do it, but not the president?
I didn't say it was. You're trying to win an
Well,
argument.
that's what you're saying.
Anthony, you're trying to win an argument rather than get to the fact of it. Did the president or did he not ask a foreign country for a favor?
No.
That has to do with he didn't.
No.
Well, what did
and
he
I'll
do?
tell you why.
Why?
I'll tell you why. See, it's all a matter of how people want to frame this, okay?
Go ahead.
They want to say he wants to investigate a private citizen. That's baloney. He wants an investigation that was closed without a decision reopened. That's what he wants. Now, will it benefit him politically?
Now,
Absolutely.
Anthony, why,
if it comes out the way he believes it's going to come
Anthony,
out. But if it comes out the other way, then
Anthony,
it hurts him.
I answered your questions.
Until that's done, nobody knows.
I answered your questions. Now you answer mine. Do you think the president asked a foreign power to help him politically? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. If you believe that, and you can, fine. We don't agree. You know, and as far as the respect thing goes, I know how you are when you get angry. I know you forever now. Anthony, and I always go back to this because every once in a while I get hit with it because I find this president to be anti-American in the way he is, but I don't think he's broken any laws, you see. And I don't want him impeached because of that. But when this whole business even started, I think I'm the only guy in broadcasting that called President Obama a quisling. That's like calling a guy a punk in the street. So I call it when I see it. If I knew Biden did that then, and you're right, I missed it. I didn't see it in the news. It flew over my head. The press didn't report it. Of course I would have called him out, same way I called out Obama. Look, my whole point was, and I understand your reaction, is that exactly what we're talking about is the problem. It's so hard to get to the truth. I want to bang my head in the wall. Now, you listen most days. You know that I don't think he's going to get impeached. I don't think that I think the senators have a very sacred thing here. I don't think there's, and that's why I did use the word implied. It's very hard to prove quid pro quo, but it's not hard to deduce that he asked them for a favor. Do you follow what I'm saying?
And you're differentiating between the two?
No, I'm not. I just didn't know about the first. And that's an honest thing.
That's my point. That's my point, Bob. And this, Nancy Pelosi, I sent you the link.
Yeah, I said it before.
Okay, I think it was back in March, said she would not move forward with impeachment without bipartisan. I understand. I'm just reiterating something you covered. I'm not saying you didn't cover it. Calm down. Calm down. Take your gray hair and part it in the middle. You know what I mean?
I'm strangling the microphone.
Okay.
I'm strangling the mic. Listen.
My point is, these people, and it goes on both sides, but right now it's the Democrats because they're in power in the House.
And let me make a point because you touched a nerve, and I know you did it with respect. Of course, I know that people died in Benghazi. I'm talking about the aspect of what's gone on in our system. All we need is any pretext to go after the person. Now, Benghazi needed to be investigated, but you know yourself, or at least I think you do, that we became all about Hillary. Let's besmirch her. Let's besmirch the president. And it's like I think I'm the only guy in the freaking world.
But Bob, wait a minute. Whose responsibility was it to protect those Americans?
It was.
So why shouldn't we go after Hillary?
No, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is we go after them with a vigor beyond the reality of it. I mean, come on. I mean, she was running a prostitution ring out of a Virginia pizzeria, and there were people that believe it. Russ says it every day.
And the only reason we don't have confirmation is because Epstein found a way to get to the hereafter.
Oh, please don't mention Epstein. By the way, did you see that celebrity coroner saying he wasn't? Just a little bit to your point, saying he wasn't.
I don't know if he said he wasn't. I think if I read it a little differently than you. If that's the way you read it, I read it that the bones in the neck were more consistent with strangulation.
Well, it's kind of like this Arsis case, though. I don't, my lead story today. Something, how were they not watching a guy who was supposed to be on suicide watch and had every reason to want to kill himself with his life ruined? There always are things like this Arsis case. The top story today. That's the guy his wife killed a little girl, and the cop said we can't break in, and the judge says you can't break in. He should have broke down the door. I mean, imagine you with your temper if you thought someone was going to kill your kid.
Let me tell you right now, if I was one of the police officers on the scene that night,
Yeah.
and I know it's easy for me to say in hindsight and not being confronted with that situation.
Sure.
But if I honestly believed that any child was in danger, I would lose my job over taking that child out of that situation.
Yeah, so would I. But you know what? I'm going to mention something that doesn't necessarily relate to that incident, but we're getting just a little too crazy with tying cops' hands. This is getting scary. I mean, you can't arrest anyone. There's this other case where a guy is getting arrested. I don't know what happened. He fell in the street or whatever, and it's all the cops' fault. You know, in these interventions, and who said it better than I think it was Eddie Murphy or Chris Rock? When the cop says you're under arrest, shut the fleep up.
That's it.
That's
it.
Anyway, thank you for
too many ambulance chases in the attorney's level ranks. So it is what it is.
Thank you for waking me up this morning. You got me. By the way, I was in a pretty bad mood. My computer froze. My info computer. But I don't know. Anyway, Anthony, thank you very much for the call.
God knows how you're going to get through the show without that.
No, I hate you. I hate you viscerally down to my toes. Thank you very much for the call. And as you and I like to say, we get the sticks up once in a while. That's a hockey term, folks. It is 6:37. This is the one, the only. Please join the conversation. Other people have opinions. Disagree with Anthony. I do. Or, as Anthony does, disagree with me. Let's take a look at what's upcoming. We're going to talk with Martha, but again, what is it about our political system? We can't. Obamacare went through with only, and I was for that, with only Democrats voting. And it was an ugly baby, but it got born. We have other situations where the Republicans only vote one way, and not one of them voted for this. For taking all this information that Anthony and I are arguing about, they voted, they should want it to come out. They should want the next stage to happen. Let's get it all out there, at any rate. All right, we've got a problem down in New York City, an interesting problem. Oh, and by the way, if you get a chance, Anthony and others, read John Poteretz. He said more eloquently what I've been trying to say, how both sides need a smack in the back of the head. Okay, in New York, everyone's getting upset because of the early voting and the way they're using schools. And the parents are upset. Well, it's upsetting my child. Well, you know what? Maybe it's a good idea that your child realizes how important voting is. Now, should they have isolated the voting in another part of the school where it didn't get in the way in the cafeteria? Yeah, that's a question of execution. But if your children were just a little bit, I want them to eat their lunch. But while you're whining for your children, maybe you ought to be telling them how important it is to vote. And yes, in this little instance, you're not going to get a medal. You're not going to get a participation award. You're not going to be sent to a safe space. Your snowflake-like child is not going to melt. But guess what? You're going to wait 5 more minutes on the food line, because elections, and that's what we're arguing about here. That's what Anthony and I are arguing about. And which is, isn't it better? I mean, unless someone proves that the president did something so totally and completely antithetical to the Constitution that it meets the standard, and no one has said it yet, it meets the standard of a high crime and misdemeanor. I mean, he's abused his power. Well, I'm sure they all do, but he has overtly done that. But does it reach the level of an impeachable offense? And I'm talking about not impeaching, that's a trial, of conviction? Probably not. But the only people who decide that are the Senate. Those are the only people that will decide it. Because in this country, the way we're built, unless these senators or some other group of senators one day makes a decision that that's it, you've gone too far. Unless somebody does that, folks, it's all about elections. So you know what, Ma? I understand you're upset. Your little boy, but they had no ketchup packets because they were voting. Sit him down and say that's because this is that sacred in this country today. It is 6:41. We have to take a look at the weather, if I could find it, as Anthony correctly noted, and without my computer working. I couldn't even print on this. It's called a wind book, by the way. Whoever makes it, whoever manufactures it, folks, I want you to go out, call them up and yell at them and say you make a piece of crap. All righty. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew. of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Now listen up. Here's the weather today. It's 46 right now. We're going to get up to about 55, 56 today. It's going to be a nice day, but we have a wind advisory in effect, 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts. And as we get into tomorrow, it'll be breezy and sunny as well. But tomorrow night, you may have to put on the heat if you haven't been using it already. Temperatures will drop to 34 here in New Rochelle, and in the higher elevations that we may well get our first frost and get down below freezing. So you have been warned. Our other programs today are supported by Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And let us remind you, Dominic Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente. I wonder who he is. I know it's the name of a cigar. Padrons and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. Today at, I guess it's at 7:50. No, it's 8:20. We will be talking with them, and we'll get Jake's picks of the week. Now, Jake, if you're one of these people that likes to gamble in the new official legal gambling world, you will note that he's 5-1, 5-1. So you may want to listen in his 2 weeks. Let's see what his 3 picks are today. Maybe we'll squeeze 4 out of him. Once again, early voting today, Thursday. No, I'm sorry. I just threw it out. Friday. Friday, October 31st. Now we have a Friday, November 1st, pardon me. You can go out and vote 8 to 4. Now, Martha Lopez, this will be her last visit with us. Now, we reached out to some people, and consistent with my process, I give a hard time to political people who run for office and don't post a phone number. Always have, always will. And I want to say this to you. If someone's hard to get a hold of and they run for office, do you think they're going to get better if they're elected? Do you think if you call them with a complaint that they're going to be responsive? Do you think once they get that sense of entitlement that many elected officials have, now some are good at it, even people you may forget your politics, whether you like them or not. George Latimer, and we all kid about it in the news, and even people that don't like the county executive, he'll show up to a bug race. And if you call him, he'll probably, that's right, he'd probably take you out for a cup of coffee. Then there are other people, you're going to have to get the CIA to find them when you need them. And that's just one aspect of being a public servant. It doesn't make you the best or the worst, but don't vote for somebody that, that doesn't put a phone number out there, make it easy to get a hold of. Don't do it. It's my advice. Don't do it. Now, having said that, I don't do endorsements here. We want to play it straight, but I do throw people under the bus. Some people have just been hard to get a hold of. Sarah Kay is running on the Democratic ticket. We reached out to her a few times over the last several months. Has never come on. And as a judge would say, when they go to a jury, you're allowed to use this information, because here's my concern with some of the Democratic choices, and it's not quite the way it used to be here in this city. And I've always been a fan of the mayor in general, but this is the political part of who his party is. I've always gotten the feeling in recent years that they just want people that are going to run in lockstep. But I want them to come out and play. You're going to be in lockstep, fine. Give me my dance. Give me my free dance. Come out here and answer questions. Show me you know policy. Show me you at least tried to work on policy. It makes me wonder. Now, Sarah Langlois came in. It wasn't always easy to get her, but we finally did, and she came on, and I appreciate that. Andre Wallace. Now, Andre is fighting, in a sense, for his political life, and I get that. And this radio station is probably not the most important thing he's doing. He's well-funded, so he's got TV commercials, and he's got an uphill battle because he's facing a woman who has the full support of the Democratic Party and won their primary. And I know him, and I get along well with him, but this is my business now. He blew us off a couple of times after he was committed. Well, I do have his phone number, even on my cell phone. Very hard to get a hold of. Use it as you will. Use it as you will. There are others. There are others who we couldn't get on. Lou Trangucci came on once, and then after a couple of bad reviews in the papers by people, and again, that was a separate but investigative work that's being done about his campaign, he didn't come on anymore. And I saved 2 hours or an hour and a half worth of radio for him. Folks, do you know how much money? Well, actually, the rates for political advertising are free. Now, here at this radio station, we made a decision this year, especially that we were new. We were going to do a favor for the candidates and a favor for the listenership. There's a period at all radio stations where we stop having them on as guests because, well, they need to advertise. But we decided we give them their ability to advertise for free. Some people took full advantage of it. In fact, give a lot of credit to Brendan Conroy, and I'll tell you why. And we talked about it openly the other day, even on the air. When he first came out to play in July, he was willing to come on the radio at my old station. Bless them and the good political work they do. He came on, and he wasn't up to snuff yet. He wasn't ready for prime time. So he went back. He studied the issues such as they are and such as he interpreted them and what he wanted to do with them. You can agree with them or not. But he hasn't missed a chance to come in here and lay himself out on the line. That's got some value. You ought to think about that. And you still should think about, even though they're fine, I'm sure they're fine people and fine candidates, there has been this tendency, although it's getting away from the Democrats now, to get people who will, in my gut, just go lockstep along with the Democratic Party. I don't think you're going to see that with everyone. I think one of the things that this group, Indivisible Westchester, has done that is healthy, I don't always agree with what they do, is if the status quo isn't what they like, the candidates that they put forward, particularly those to the further left, are going to be a lot more independent, and that's healthy. I may not agree with everything, but that's healthy. Now, that is also politics. Every chief executive wants, believe me, unless it's in their defense, they want lapdogs, not pit bulls. So when you come out to vote, vote who you want, vote for whom you want. But it's just, it was important to call out. And I called, who took every advantage too for a while? Sean Patterson Howard, but that was after she missed a couple of hits. And that's all we ask you to think about. If they don't want to show up for free advertising, they don't want to post a phone number, they don't return a call, what do you think they're going to do when you call them up because your sidewalk just cracked open with a big leak? All right. Vote at your peril. It is 649 914 222 3141. 914 222 3141. And you must, I'm sure, you must have an opinion about what's going on in the school system here. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit. As of today, Ms. Fajo has taken over the New Rochelle City Schools. And as much as politicians will come in here, elected officials will come in here and tell you that they need to keep their safe distance from the school system, they got their fingers all over it. They really do. And there are people in the political class, because they want the votes of the people who don't want her there, that aren't going to support her. So it's up to you, it's up to the people living here in the city to support her or not. If enough people won't, she won't stay. And you do that at the school board election. So wear that, know that. We'll be back right after this. 222-3141. The phone number is 222-3141. We'll be right back. We have returned. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. We are live at the train station today. It is November 1st, 2019. Where did the time go? Now, I've got a couple of other stories I'm going to share with you. A lot of things going on the planet, to and fro. By the way, the CNN is now saying that Trump's audacious reelection campaign is actually going to be focused on his impeachment defense. So, okay. What do I want to talk to you about? I got it all right. Oh, yeah. I usually don't get into these things, but this is really true. In fact, speaking of the president, I actually ran into Donald Trump. This is before I did news, when I was a Wall Street guy at this restaurant. And he was actually, it's like 20 years ago. So I've interviewed him a couple of times in person. He was a very good interview, by the way. Funny, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, imagine this. The New York Times and the New York Post, they gave lots of inches of coverage to the fact that Peter Luger, the famous steakhouse, if you've ever eaten, it's very expensive. The food is pretty good. But the reviews coming out now are that it is not very, very special anymore. And I knew that the last couple of times I went there. You know, it's the kind of thing, you don't go there unless your company's paying for it or you have a rich uncle, because it's very expensive. And the steaks are pretty good. But they have steaks, fries. They only have a few things that they serve. Anyway, this Times review was so bad that it made a full-page story in the New York Post. And the legendary Brooklyn Steakhouse, it said, was denounced Tuesday as an overrated scam. Imagine that. Now, I don't know if you've ever eaten there, but still the food is good. But there are better steakhouses around, too, and Morton's and etc. So, anyway, just thought you'd want to mention, just thought you want to hear about that. Now, for those of you who are hockey fans and followed the 1980 Olympics, the so-called Miracle on Ice, one of the players there, it's a very interesting story. It was always a little odd because he played for the Rangers for a while, was really good as a small center, Mark Pavlich. After he retired, he would never come back for any type of retrospectives, either for the 1980 team or the Rangers, choosing instead to live in a cabin up in northern Canada, northern Minnesota, and fish. All right, a little bit eccentric. Well, the sad story comes out now that his family has had to commit him, and they're wondering if, as happens with these more physical sports, that concussions and blows he received during his playing career contributed to his legal troubles. A Minnesota judge Monday found the 61-year-old incompetent to stand trial on charges he beat a neighbor with a metal pole. The case was suspended because he's not fit to stand trial. And I'm just wondering, I don't know, in his case, he wasn't that kind of player. But then again, when you're small, he was a small player. He played hard, but he wasn't the kind of player to get into fights. But then again, some people are suspecting that, like other athletes, and particularly football players more recently, and some hockey fighters, that he has that CTE. So people are wondering. Just wondering now. It's a sad story. All right, let's go further. Have you had a chance to look into the New York State lists of being owed money, okay, unclaimed property? Now, believe it or not, New York is sitting on a pot. Now, listen to this number. $16 billion in unclaimed funds. So you might want to check and see if any of it is yours. And here's where you go to check. This is HTTPS, you know all that, hashtag data. It's data.democratandchronicle.com. Data.democratandchronicle.com. 45% of the money comes from old bank accounts. Financial institutions are required to send the money to the state once they sit dormant for years. With 40 million accounts, the comptroller's office said it returns more than $1.5 million daily. The largest return from stock claim, and we'll get to that in a moment. 70% of claims are less than $100. And here's how it happens. For those of you who have securities accounts, it's amazing. But they don't send you a memo, and they should. Some companies have figured out to send a memo to your broker because it's more money in your account that you can invest. And they may be able to get a piece of that. But if you have securities, many securities pay dividends. Many securities also pay stock dividends, which is, in essence, more stock for the stock you have. And I know this from my Wall Street days. I ran the area that did this. A lot of people don't even look to see if they got it. A lot of people don't even look to see if they got a check in the mail. A lot of people don't look to see if they got interest. So you really want to check it out. We used to write off, millions of people who never claimed their property. Now, we'd have to turn it over to the state, as you've just read or heard. And once you turn it over to the state, it reaches a period over time where even they finally write it off. But that's a lot of money. So please, if you haven't yet, check out unclaimed property. Or just go to New York State, go to their website, and type in unclaimed property. And another thing, again, stock. A lot of people get issued stock on a position that they have, don't know it, and it goes on. It goes unclaimed. A lot of money. $14 billion is a lot of money. Before we go to the 7 o'clock break and then start in with our guests, I did pick something up the other day that I thought you might find interesting. And it had to do with the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. And he was impeached. Now, in him, it was almost, we don't know if he really defied the law. His Republican adversaries in Congress accused him of defying the law, acting like a king, and speaking and acting in a way that was unbecoming a presidency. Well, that's like some of the things they say about Trump, but it doesn't mean he broke the law. Now, America's 17th president, that's what he was, took office upon the assassination of Abraham Lincoln amid a polarizing struggle in Washington over the Reconstruction of the South. Johnson was an outspoken, temperamental populist given to fiery speeches laden with insults, sounds familiar, blatant racism, and suggestions that his political enemies be hanged. A semi-literate tailor with no formal education, Johnson rose to political power by aligning himself in his home state of Tennessee with a loyal base of poor mountainers and a small farmers seeking a political champion. He was hated by that area's, quote, radical Republicans. And obviously he became president when Lincoln was shot. But what had happened was, when Lincoln was running for a second term, he wanted someone who was not a rabid abolitionist to balance the ticket, and from the South. So he demonstrated a stunning moment of political courage when he became the only senator from a Confederate state to remain loyal to the Union. Damn the Negroes, he said, this is a quote, I'm fighting those traitorous aristocrats and their masters. He owned a few slaves himself, and in an attempt to forge some national unity, President Lincoln, a Republican, appointed Johnson, a pro-Union Democrat, military governor of Tennessee in May 1862. Now, after Lincoln died, he abandoned Lincoln's agenda. Once elevated, he declared that America is a country of white men, quote unquote, and guaranteed it would remain as such for as long as I am president. He pardoned more than 7,000 Confederates. Now, what did Congress do? Some members searched for evidence connecting Johnson with Lincoln's assassination. John Wilkes Booth, for example. The House investigated Johnson's drinking and whether he frequented prostitutes. In March 1866, Johnson vetoed a civil rights bill that would have granted freedmen citizenship and the right to sue. Now, during his term, during the fall of 1866, Johnson toured northern cities to build support for his lenient approach to Reconstruction, casting himself as the only thing standing between whites and, quote, what he called Negro domination. He compared himself to Jesus Christ and his pardons for Confederates to divine mercy. When a heckler in Cleveland yelled, "Hang Jeff Davis," Johnson suggested that his chief political antagonist, Representative Thaddeus Stevens, should be hanged, blah, blah, blah. Now, what brought impeachment? During the tour, Johnson threatened to fire any cabinet member who opposed him, prompting Congress to pass the Tenure of Office Act, prohibiting such dismissals without Senate consent. Matters came to a head early in 1868 when Johnson fired Secretary of War Edward Stanton, who transferred his belongings to the War Department and barricaded the doors. Anyway, the House voted 126 to 47 to impeach Johnson on 11 articles. The first 8 concerned Stanton's ouster. The ninth, Johnson circumventing the chain of command by giving orders directly to a general. And the 10th and 11th, his conduct and rhetoric in office. Now, what you're seeing is something not dissimilar to what's going on today. And that's why many people are focusing, as they should, on whether or not the president asked a foreign power to intervene. Because while he may be coarse and he may abuse his power in remember, venal and mortal sins and venal ways, does he really abused his power? Probably not. But in this case, unless, of course, the Senate deems that going to a foreign government is too much, and that's really where the rubber meets the road. At any rate, then, as is the case today, Congress labored mightily over what constituted an impeachable offense. Should the process be understood narrowly as a criminal proceeding that addressed the breaking of a specific law, or more broadly as a political mechanism to redress what members saw as Johnson's unfitness for office? Although Johnson's racist rhetoric was not illegal, Senator Charles Sumner framed impeachment as a final battle against slavery. Again, they were impeaching this guy because they thought him unpresidential. Now, he was only one vote away. He almost was voted out of office, but there is a rumor still out there after all of these years that he bribed that one senator to vote for acquittal, and thus he was not impeached. We have to take a break and restart up the 7 o'clock hour and get to all of our guests. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. It's 45 degrees. It's still dark out, and it's going to stay that way yet for about another 30 minutes or so. It's dark out across the Sound Shore. It's going to get up to the to the low 60s today, high 50s. No rain in the forecast, but beware, plenty of wind. We'll be right back. Good morning. It is 7:05. Welcome to the 7 o'clock hour of Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. Our top stories this morning. Cynthia Arce sentenced to 25 to life for killing her daughter. We still want to know why the other people have not been, and that is the police, the EMTs, the judge, why they've not been called to answer how that even happened. A suspected computer error is thought to have caused the White Plains High School lockdown yesterday. They're looking into it. President Donald Trump's Florida move, that's right, he's established his domicile now in Florida. It draws rebuke from the New York governor. A 9-year-old trick-or-treater here in New Rochelle was struck by a tree limb yesterday. Those stories and more coming up right now as we go into the 7 o'clock hour. Today's program is brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management and their pals over at Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn. Plug-in Virtual Reality and Dominic's Cigars, who sponsor our weekly Jake's Picks, football picks of the week. He's 5-1. You'll want to see what he has today. Come up with today, and we're doing that at 8:20. And a reminder, at 7:20, we'll talk with Martha Lopez. She is running here in New Rochelle for the seat in District 1. The news. A Marrone woman was sentenced yesterday to 25 years to life in prison for killing her 2.5-year-old daughter last year. Cynthia Arce is in a special category of evil, said Supreme Court Judge Justice Barry Warhead, and he noted this as he sentenced the 30-year-old Westchester County resident yesterday. You extinguished a young, beautiful life, he said. Gabriel's father, Stephen Boyd, spent most of his victim impact statement addressing Arce, who he called an evil, selfish baby killer. The couple had shared custody of Gabriella, who lived with her mother and maternal grandmother, but on the day before the killing, on April 28th, Boyd had obtained a court order granting him custody because of concerns that Arce posed a danger to herself. Police would not enforce the order, and the next morning Arce killed Gabriella after telling Boyd the girl was too sick to have her weekly visit with him. And Boyd was a pretty angry person at the sentencing yesterday. He said, "It is unbelievable and inconceivable that you took the life of my 2.5-year-old little girl. She was defenseless, she was innocent, and yet you murdered her. You never deserved the title of mother because of everything you put her through," he said. But really, what still needs to be looked into is the process. And you don't want to blame the police. You don't want to straight out blame the judge or the departments of social services, as they may exist in different locales. But the system failed this little girl. And we haven't seen or heard enough about that. But we won't let it go. A possible computer error led to a massive police response right before dismissal time at White Plains High School yesterday. This in Lohud this morning. The school went into lockdown around 2 o'clock and was lifted around 2:45 and converted to a hold in place while police swept through the building again. By that time, School Superintendent Joseph Farica and Public Safety Commissioner David Chong told parents it was a false alarm. Now, the school, actually the White Plains City School District, conducts drills of both lockdown and other protocols. So a part of that process and that planning process, kind of like a fire drill, if you will, they don't know how it was triggered. They think it is a computer error. They are looking into it. Now, this next story is about the president, but really it's about our governor as well, Andrew Cuomo, making a snide remark himself. In fact, the governor said yesterday he's not lamenting Donald Trump's decision to change his residency from his lifelong home of New York to Florida. He said, and I quote, the governor said, "Good riddance." Oh, we have quite the political rhetoric these days. The New York Times indeed reported Thursday that the president, a Republican, and First Lady Melania Trump filed separate, quote, declarations of domicile in Florida last month, a legal move that shifts his residency from Manhattan to his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach. And some of that, too, you know, he's going to be able to say he's a Florida resident when those 29 electoral votes come out. And he's not happy with the taxes he pays and the way New York politicians on the local and state level treat him. We don't have an answer for this next story yet in terms of how the child is. But yesterday, we talked about the high winds, obviously. But yesterday here in New Rochelle, according to a story in News 12, the powerful winds crashed a tree or a tree limb, and it fell on a 9-year-old girl. She was with a group of adults when she was struck by the tree. It happened around 6:30 on Maywood Road in the Beachmont Woods neighborhood. News 12, again, who gave us the story, said she was taken to Jacoby Medical Center. No word yet on her condition. And the rash of hate crimes as seen throughout the lower Hudson Valley continued in Ossining Thursday. And that's as Chris Eberhardt, good reporter, by the way, wrote it. I would not quite call it a hate crime yet. A swastika and racial slur were found on a bathroom wall in Ossining High School. High school kids, stupid idiots. Detectives are working closely with the school district to investigate the incident. We'll see just how serious it is. And the family of a woman who was allegedly beaten to death by her boyfriend says he pretended like nothing happened. Police say Deborah Walding was brutally beaten to death by her boyfriend, Louis Rendon, in their New Windsor apartment. Walding was found dead by a maintenance worker just days after her last phone call with her mother on October 6. The family says what shook them the most was how Rondon acted after her death. He called them up, said how sorry he was, all those kinds of things. That shouldn't surprise them. That behavior is pretty classic. And for those of you who lost FiOS, how do I get my local news I need News 12 because they're the only local game left in town television-wise. Well, it's coming to you, to Verizon Fios, only a few days from now, November 4th, Monday. Verizon and News 12's parent, Altice USA, won't comment officially, but employees did get the memo. An email to News 12 staffers, to News 12 staffers, said the Long Island-based hyper-local news, but why Long Island? Anyway, outlet would join the Fios lineup the day before the November 5 elections. And that is a good thing, actually. Good for Altice and good that they're doing it. We do not have enough local news reporting, and it's good to have TV reporting in this way, don't you think? Do you know what today is? In fact, I get to grind one of my favorite axes. Today is National Vegan Day. That's right, National Vegan Day. So I'm going out to have a steak to promote it. Just saying. All right, it's time for the weather as we pass through 7:13. The weather this morning is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. The temperature steady at 46, scattered clouds, getting up to 55 today, sunny, windy. In fact, some gusts. We think it's past, but that's just a visual and from our experience being out this morning. But they say the wind could be out of the west, 30 miles an hour plus. So we think it's a little less, but we'll keep our eye on it for you. Now, tonight, clear skies. The temperature will be 34 degrees. The wind will be northwest, 5 miles per hour. Saturday, mostly sunny skies. A temperature of 52 degrees. Sunny, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 51. The overnight low will be 35 degrees. Today's programs in the 7 o'clock hour is supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And Dominic Cigars, those are the folks that will be bringing you Jake's Picks of the Week. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. And we look forward now to our guest coming up this hour. Martha Lopez is in the house today. We're going to talk with Steve Callis a little bit about sports, find out what's going on in his world. We have the managing editor and the publisher of the Westchester Post, also the Mount Vernon Post. Janelle Albritton is with us this morning. Dr. Victor Sternberg will be with us in the 8 o'clock hour. And Hezi Aris will be with us at 9 o'clock. Now at 8:20, that's when we'll have Jake's Picks of the Week. It is 7:15. If you haven't already, again, we're going to keep beating it, and we know we're probably getting boring by now, but we are in early voting. If you haven't voted yet, please get out and vote. Please have an impact on your community. We've got some issues that will be coming out after the election that not that you'll have a greater say, but you may be able to affect how it gets managed. The rumblings that we're hearing and the sources that we have tell us that after the election, and even though the city's doing well financially, that there are, and we spoke yesterday about this with Brendan Conroy, there are some expenses, infrastructure expenses, that I guess they were not anticipated, that y'all are going to pay for when you do your water bill, something called an outflow cost. Talk about burying an expense. And maybe it was always thus. Maybe they told us and we don't remember. Maybe some of the buildings moved more quickly than they should have, or more buildings are being erected than they even had hoped, and thus the extra expense. In any case, we are going to want them to justify that. And one of the things that Sarah Langlois said the other day when she was in here, and others who have called have said, why is it that we don't see the budget till after Election Day? Well, it's always been thus, by the way, with the exception of George Latimer's announcement 2 days ago that the county, while their budget's not done yet, they anticipate a tax cut. and which came kind of as a surprise after all of the financial issues that we've been through. Now, we've got a few minutes before we go to our next guest. If you'd like to call and weigh in on that, 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. And I just want to revisit this story that we're not going to give up on. Let's see. That probably is our guest. Oh, no, it's another caller. Hold on. Let me go to it. All righty. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bobby, it's Anthony.
He's returned. What's up?
In New Rochelle,
Yes.
the budget is mandated by the charter to be released by the city manager on November 10th.
So it's in the charter. Now, do you think that was deliberate?
Political.
Yeah,
It's political.
of course it is.
Purely
That's
political.
Yeah, because
Okay, and I want you to understand something about the county reducing the tax rate. Let's understand something. They can't reduce the tax rate unless they overtax you in the first place.
well, yes, of course. Of course, I was just going to say that. Well, they did do the 1% tax. That's actually, I guess, 7 to 12% based on the people that get.
No,
hit with it.
14% increase.
I'm bad at math, but you get my drift.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we have the facts out there. That's all.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, 14% increase. I believe was $900 million. They also had and this has nothing to do with anything political or any person. They had good weather for Playland. They actually extended Playland, I think, another week or two.
Yeah, they did.
So that raises extra revenue also. And again, that's credit to them. If the weather's there and you open it and you make money, it is what it is.
Yeah, you get a break.
But my point is, people, this should not be touted as a tax reduction that just happened by itself because we had a zero budgeting process or something like that. This is a tax reduction based on the fact that the sales tax was increased 14%. As I've said to you 100 times, what difference does it make which pocket it comes out of? So if you took a 14% increase out of my right pocket and you gave me a 1% reduction out of my left pocket, that still leaves me 13% in the hole.
Sure it does. And do you know what I'm getting more and more reaction to, Anthony? The red light cameras are not very popular. And it's not because people want to go. No, it's not that people want to go through red lights. Everybody feels it's a money grab, and then
it is. And let me expand on that. Let me expand on that. Those red light cameras.
Yeah.
You can also get a ticket for making an improper right on red if you don't make a full stop.
Yeah, I know. I feel that it is a money grab, and I'm going to go to my grave with that one. They say, "Oh, it's made the streets safer." I don't know. I've almost stopped short a couple of times because
you had someone, I forget who his name was. I think he's a detective now. He was on the city council in Yonkers.
Oh yes, yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you need to get him on in reference to this. He did a study as a councilman in Yonkers. Those stats are very deceiving. The red light cameras decrease T-bone accidents, but they increase rear-end accidents.
Of course they do. Between red light cameras and cell phones, all you see is rear-end accidents, Anthony.
Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
all you see across the board. I was talking about something before, since I have you and before I go. I'm troubled by the fact that there are people that are running for office right now whose style of running for office is just to say nothing, do nothing, hide in the background. And it bothers the spit out of me.
And I'll guarantee you 99% of those are people in the ruling party.
Of course they are.
Who feel they don't have to do anything. And all they have to do is skate by, not stick their foot in their mouth between now and November 5th.
That's why
it's a done deal.
Without taking sides in the race, I applaud what
both sides do. It's just a question of who's in power at any particular time.
But I give Brendan Conroy a lot of credit for coming out and trying to get a grasp on the issues and show up and answer questions for like 3 hours in here in the last couple of weeks. So it's interesting.
From his first interview, he's come a long way. I have to give him credit.
You really do, and he's game, and that's all you can be. As much as we get torqued off at elected officials and have lots of reasons to do it, it still is. I still don't know why they do it. Why they want to put themselves.
Let me tell you what I consider to be the worst thing about election, the silly season.
Yes.
take any attack mailer that you see. I don't, regardless of what race it's in. I don't care. Could be a local city council, could be mayor, could be a county legislator. Look at who's accredited for sending that mail. It will 99% of the time never be the actual candidate. It'll always be the party that they're associated with, so that the candidate can, quote, have clean hands.
Yeah, especially when they're nasty. Especially.
That's my side. I'm talking about attack mailer.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I classify as an attack mailer.
It's well said. Well, you know what was interesting, and you can see the hurt when I was interviewing him yesterday, being new to the process. He said he's enjoyed, that is, Mr. Conroy has enjoyed running for office until he got some of the nasty grams. It threw his head back. It's really become bare knuckled, Anthony. It's just unfortunate, but I guess it's always been.
Thick skin doesn't even cut anymore. The political climate today, and quite honestly, myself included, is a reason a lot of good people, choose not to run for office.
Oh, I know. I mean, why would you? Anything you've ever done, like all those robberies you committed and beatings, you'd have to answer for them.
Hey, listen, the first thing that would happen, my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Giuseppe Kumagabatsiabam, was found to be, having slaves or smuggling wine or, whatever, smuggling immigrants into whatever the case may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And to me, that's, I'll just parallel that into saying, that's why I think, reparations is kind of ridiculous. You and I didn't do anything.
No.
And maybe somewhere in our past, one of our, great ancestors had owned slaves. But
wow.
The trouble in general today is everybody wants to judge the past by today's standards.
Oh, you just can't do it. You just can't do it. And what we're doing, though, inadvertently, is wiping away our history. It's a very dangerous thing to do, because even the things that we did that we're sorry we did, they're a part of the growth of a country the same way a human being grows up, and it's a part of our history.
Yeah, but it's one thing to acknowledge what happened. It's another thing to discredit it.
That's exactly right. Hey, this is a stupid thing, but I thought of this yesterday at Halloween. Did you ever dunk for apples as a kid?
Well, I did something that was considered dunking for apples, but it wasn't Halloween based.
I'm afraid to ask. Go ahead.
I can't say it.
All right, listen, I got to go. I got to call. Thank you very much, Anthony. He won't tell us what it is. I do believe that my next guest is on the line, one of our candidates for office. Martha, is that you?
That is me.
Hi.
Correct. Morning, Bob. How are you?
Good morning. Very good. Now, let me set the stage. My guest is Martha Lopez. She's running on the Democratic ticket in District 1 here in New Rochelle. She's been out beating the streets, handing out brochures, saying hello to people, kissing babies, right?
Of course. Getting to know everyone in our district, Bob, ranging from business owners to workers, to students, to kids, to mothers, to seniors, to everyone who lives in our district.
Are you
listening to concerns so that we can bring those concerns to City Hall and make, those concerns lessen by bringing the opportunities that we need to have in District 1.
How do you feel the campaign is going? Are you encouraged? Are you worried?
I am not worried. I am very much encouraged. People are really, very enthusiastic. Every place I go last night, actually, when kids were trick-or-treating, the mothers were, recognizing me. They were saying, "Oh, Martha Lopez," which is really very exciting. Very, very exciting.
You know what? 3 days left before, well, you've also got Election Day. You know what? You should go rent a bus. Rent a bus, and when they say they're going to vote for you, all right, get on the bus now. Let's go. It's early voting. Come on, hop on. You can call it the Martha Lopez Express.
Well, actually, let me tell you that is what is happening. I will be, talking to people in a restaurant, and they will say to me, "Can I go now? Let's go. Let's get on the car and let's go." And I'll be driving them. There was a 95-year-old lady who actually, asked a friend of mine, one of the volunteers, "Can you take me?" 95 years old. She went and exercised her right to vote. Isn't that fantastic? That is what I say, Let's get the vote out.
Well, that is now, since it's your last day with us before Election Day, I want to give you a chance to go through your profile once again. Tell us about you, what you do for a living, where you grew up here in Westchester, etc. Imagine that someone's listening for the first time. What do you want them to know about Martha Lopez?
I want them to know that for the past 40 years, I have dedicated my life to work with the community. I have been working in government and the not-for-profit sector, 18 years in housing as the assistant director, and also presently I work for the Westchester County Executive, George Latimer, and I do community and immigrant affairs as well as the Minority Women Business Enterprise Program. I am also the founder of two not-for-profits that have celebrated more than 30 years of existence. One is the Community Resource Center located in Marrone that helps immigrants, serves as the bridge to make the connections between the programs and services available and what is needed. And then a latchkey program that we began almost 40 years ago because we were concerned that kids were going home and, there was no one there to watch them, which, that many times because of the rents that are so expensive, of the taxes that are extremely high, many times people do not have the money to send their kids to an after-school program because it costs money. Luckily, we have those programs here in New Rochelle. We have a wonderful Boys and Girls Club that helps in so many different ways, and I am so happy and I look forward to working with them and, doing many different things, as well as a bilingual bicultural agency that is also here. I am looking forward to working with them. Establishing connections is extremely important.
Martha, the only reason I stopped at you there for a moment is I want to remind people that voice you hear is that of Martha Lopez. She's running for election District 1 here in New Rochelle against incumbent Lou Trangucci. Something I wanted to mention, if you get elected, okay, one of the things we'd like to do is have you do a broadcast, if you like, once a week where you could do it bilingually so that Spanish-speaking folks could call in and have a voice.
Wow, that is such a great idea, and thank you so much, because one of the things that I am going to do when I get elected is that I am going to have community, coffee conversation. I want to have, I want to be at City Hall where I'm going to be there twice or 3 times a month, different hours for people to come and, tell me what their concerns are. I would love for everyone to have, the opportunity to know that I am there 24/7. So my personal phone number, so many people have, and people call me with different issues, not only needing help with getting information about City Hall, but about many other programs. When we have, a senior citizen, for example, who is moving into a senior housing apartment and they do not have any furniture. Well, guess what? I will work with a furniture share house to get them that furniture that they need.
You talked about that before. Again, our guest, Martha Lopez. Tell people a little bit about how you worked your way through school and what your degrees are.
Yes. Well, my parents came here more than 60 years ago. We came here 46 years ago, my brother and I. Their dream was to see their daughter have a better life, just like any other immigrant. So I went to college. My father was not able to finish college, but, he was a dishwasher. He was also, gardener. My mother worked for a factory. She cleaned houses, and they wanted their daughter to have a great education. I was very lucky. I finished college, and then I was even luckier when I was accepted to Columbia University to do my master's in social work. My parents told me something that is very important. You have to give back to the community that received you. And now my goal is to be that person that is going to give back as much as we can. we love New Rochelle. I love the West End. I love District 1. You know, District 1 is not only the West End. We have the South End as well.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. Well, I, as you know, I'm not far away from you. What I'd like you to do right now, Martha, is people are going to be today in the voting booth and next Tuesday. Give me your speech. Why should I or anyone else who lives in District 1, why should we pull the lever for you this time?
Because I will be a strong and independent voice. Because I will work with everyone to make sure that the concerns are listened. Because I am going to be working 24/7. Because I have been doing the work for more than 40 years. Now I will be doing it in a different capacity. I will be doing it as a, elected official, as a representative of the community. That is why I would love for everyone to give me their support.
Okay, thank you very much and good luck. Martha Lopez, she's running in District 1.
Vote, everyone. It is extremely important that we count our vote.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Martha Lopez.
Bye.
Okay, she's running in District 1, and I've got, let me see. If that caller would recall, we can do business. Let's see who's calling. 835. There we go. All righty. We have with us, he talks sports. He is the sports editor for the, I guess it's the Westchester Post now, also the Mount Vernon Post, and he's worked in many different capacities in sports. Please welcome Steve Callis. Good morning, Steve.
Morning, Bob. Great to be with you. WestchesterCountyPost.com. That's where I'm doing most of my work now, but it's been a lot of fun so far.
It has been a lot of fun. The first place we want to go is the World Series. Two things about it. Everybody for days has been talking about not bringing in Garrett Cole. Do you share that? Everyone's saying that Harris was tired. He shouldn't have used him. But I can't imagine a manager would use a guy he thought was too tired to pitch. What say you?
Well, I know you're a baseball guy. Garrett Cole to bring a starter in relief, even someone as good as Garrett Cole. He himself, as you know, had tailed off a little bit after having an incredible run from May through most of the playoffs being undefeated. But I will say this, and I'll have an article and a couple of videos up later today at WestchesterCountyPost.com. But if you watch the actual pitch, and I'm sure you did, that Harris has been great in the playoffs. He's been good all year. He was kind of an under-the-radar guy that nobody knew about because Osuna was the closer. But he threw a pitch down and away in the strike zone, 91 miles an hour. It literally hit the corner of the box. And Kendrick, you got to give him credit.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hitters win on good pitches, and he hit it down the right field line. It hit the screen on the fair pole or foul pole, depending on how you call it, Bob. But I don't think it was a mistake.
Oh, yeah, and I actually thought, funny that you say that, because I actually thought that he was just trying to protect the plate, but he got the head of he got the barrel of the bat on it, and instead of twisting foul, it hit the foul pole.
100% correct. So I think it's kind of a second guess. Again, you think Garrett Cole, in theory, he comes in and wins the game and he's the hero, but I think he gave up 5 earned his prior start for the first time since either April or May. And, these guys get tired, too. You see a guy like Verlander in the World Series with terrible numbers. I didn't realize how bad they were. But he's now 0-6 in 7 World Series starts. So in Game 6, that's a problem if you're looking at that. I didn't think it was a mistake. And again, I've seen Harris all year. He's pretty good.
He is pretty good. Now, the second home run, he also did he give up the second home run? Because that pitch was right down the pike. I can't remember. Anyway, I digress. The thing I would just say to Justin Verlander, next year when it comes to the playoffs, he should ship his wife to Europe for that whole month.
Oh, come on.
He should. Kate Upton, I'd be exhausted myself. All right, let's move on from that. Garrett Cole.
Let me just say, Bob, he was not good in the World Series before he was married, okay? Just to be clear.
All right. Well, but he was dating her, wasn't he? Anyway.
I don't know the time frame.
I digress. Steve Callis, our guest from the Westchester Post. He's got some videos. Before he goes, we'll find out where we can get that information. Now, speaking of Garrett Cole and some of these other pitchers, baseball's changing. When we see a team, even in the World Series, and we know some of the guys aren't even going to be there anymore, At what point will the salaries be so astronomical? I mean, we're talking. Some people are saying $200-300 million. That's crazy.
Well, I think Cole's going to get the biggest pitching contract ever. I mean, he was virtually unbeatable all year. And I agree with you 100%. You know, when I was a kid, my old man took me to 35, 40 games a year. We went all the time. Now, if you want to have good seats, you take your family once or twice a year. Same thing at the Garden, frankly, for Ranger games.
I don't even want to talk about how much it is. I bought my grandson to last year. I took him to a Ranger game. He got 6 skinny chicken wings, and it was like $16.
Yeah, no, it's
Oh,
just,
my God.
And people who say, oh, the prices don't really relate to the players' salaries, of course they do. It's ridiculous.
Well, they do, although...
I'll tell you.
Go ahead, I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Bob, I'm sorry.
No. What I was
No.
going to say is I never begrudge an athlete getting what they get because their career can end any day. But from the standpoint of every business needs to have some sort of a ceiling. I'm just surprised that they're going to pay people $30-40 million a year. The president of the United States gets $400,000. But again, it is what it is.
I think Mike Trout has set the ceiling because there's nobody near Mike Trout as an everyday player. But I don't think the ceiling's been set yet on pitchers, and I think Cole's going to set that ceiling as well. And I'll tell you this, and you'll be familiar with this. I talked to you last week about my dad, who was a gigantic hockey fan.
Yes.
And when the new Garden opened, he worked at the post office, okay? So you know he didn't make a lot of money. When the new Garden opened, in the blue seats,
Yes.
you could actually go into the Garden, and they let him sit there. The first row in the blue seats was $4 a ticket. The second row in the blue seats was $3 a ticket. So my dad, who worked in the post office, got season tickets in the second row, $3 a ticket. Flash forward to 5 years ago, I take my son and I sit 8 rows behind the plexiglass behind the net. Never been down that low in my life.
How did you get
there,
that? How did you get those tickets? I hate you.
No, I just went online and paid for them. It wasn't cheap. But when I looked at the face value of the ticket, and I know it's, 40 years, whatever it was, and it was like a season's ticket worth of the blue seats in the good old days.
Oh, yeah, well,
it's gone crazy.
Similarly, I'll share this with you. Now, you're too young to remember what we used to call a GO card. In the old Garden, with the GO card, you could be up in the equivalent, it was the end balcony then, because it was a weird shaped building. You could 75 cents. You can be like in the last 2 rows for 75 cents. Now
Wow.
I had a good job early. 21 years old. I had a decent. I wasn't rich, but I had a good job at Merrill Lynch, and I became a scalper addict. But even then, I would get 2 rows behind the glass in 1972. For $27. Do you know how cool that was?
That's incredible.
But that was a lot of money then, and that's 40, almost 50 years ago now. But yeah, what I always tell people, and the Rangers won't like this, but I have my beefs with them. Not the players, but the people that run at Madison Square Garden. I always tell people, don't waste your money going to the Garden. Drive up to Bridgeport. AAA hockey. Because of the salary cap, half the guys there can play in the majors anyway. Go there for $20 a head. You can sit by the glass. The food is cheap. It's easy to park. And AAA hockey is the best buy in sports. Well, minor league baseball is a good buy too. But AAA hockey, the American Hockey League, is ridiculous. You cannot get a better sports value.
Yeah, I can tell you this. My son, after working 3 years after college, is up at Cornell now. And last year I went to a Cornell game, hockey game.
Yeah, it's great.
First row. And you know this to be true compared to years ago. These guys are all big, strong. They can skate. Cornell has a real good D1 program, of course.
Yeah.
Dryden played there 100 years ago. And it was just incredible to sit again that close. But you're right. The crowd goes nuts. The prices are cheap. The hockey is high level in college. U.S. college now, a lot of guys go to the NHL after playing hockey in the United States.
It's just as big a feeder
system. It's a different world.
It's just as big a feeder system. In fact, I was reading something just the other day. Do you know for Division I players now, they ask them to go play in a U.S. junior league like the United States Hockey League, and because they don't even want you till you're 20, because they want you to have a man's body. It's almost like the pros college hockey now. It's very, very
100% more so than most other sports. Some guys in basketball, as you know, will go to a school for another year. But in hockey, it seems, and you know more than me about this, but in hockey, it seems virtually everybody now goes essentially to a fifth year of high school, if you will, or a first year before college. It's almost like you're a redshirt freshman.
Well, that's
even
what
though
they
you're
want
not
you
at
to
the
do.
college yet.
So they'll tell you,
100%.
go out and play
Yep.
for the Des Moines Oak Leafs in the U.S. Hockey
Yep.
League until
Yep.
you're 20, get that experience. Because if you could go as a freshman and you're 17 and you're a skinny little kid, they're not going to play you. They're, it's a tough game.
You're
Now,
right.
well, you know what's a great paradox, and I'm sure you've written about this as well. When you go, radio's like that too, by the way. When you go out of school into the business, you actually drop down. In other words, a guy playing or a gal playing Division I hockey flies by air. They have wonderful locker rooms, great trainers, but
Yep.
unless you get to the American League, and it starts there, you go to the low minors in hockey. You're a pro, yeah, you're getting paid, but you got crappy arrangements, a dingy, smelly bus. You move up, but in lifestyle, you move down. It's really
Well,
fascinating.
and similar in D1 college baseball as well, where then you sign and you go to the minors, and even if you sign for
same
a big
thing.
number, you're taking 6-hour bus rides for games.
Same thing. I remember when I was in radio school, it's all 20 years ago now, we had all this fancy, new, nice equipment. And then you go to a station and, this stuff is 24/7. The lights don't work, the switches, bzz, 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 and you realize, hey, you're in business now. Let's move on to a couple of other things. In a little while, you want to listen in at 8:20 because we got Jake's Picks of the Week. What happened with this guy on the Jets? Why does he have his knickers in a twist?
I don't really know the whole story.
Well,
The
he just
Jets are like a dysfunctional team to me.
well,
still.
he's upset that they banned
Jamal
his name.
Adams,
Yeah, Jamal.
Adams
Yeah.
is a good player. He's a good young player. He can't compare himself to, Tom Brady or Aaron Donald. That's beyond stupid. And I think he sees his team going nowhere. Same with Le'Veon Bell, frankly. I think he sees this team going nowhere. I don't know if he took the money just to take the money or he thought this team was going somewhere. But Sam Darnold played well the last 4 games of last year. Then he got mono this year. Then he had the misfortune to play against the Patriots, the best defense in football. And I don't know why. You've heard comments from ex-players who are on ESPN or somewhere now saying, look, this is a business. At the end of the day, this is a business. And I don't know why they would trade Adams. He might be their best player. But this is part of the game, and he should just keep his mouth shut and play hard. But, I hate to say it, but in New York, they're going nowhere. Both football teams, they're going nowhere.
Well, let me ask you something. How come, speaking of football, their union doesn't demand more guaranteed contracts? Because,
Well, yeah.
I know guys get hurt and it costs the team money, but these guys are putting their whole futures on the line, and a lot of contracts aren't guaranteed. That's criminal.
Well, that's coming now because that is the next thing. You're right. There are the most injuries. The next time, I think it's, I want to say it's after next season, the collective bargaining agreement. There might really be a strike this time because now the best players will get some guarantees, whereas in the past, as you know, they got no guarantees. At least now the stars are getting some. But I agree with you. Football, more than anything, is a dangerous sport. We don't have time to talk about concussions and CTE here. But we certainly did a lot of work at WestchesterCountyPost.com, articles, videos on the whole thing. League of Denial is now, 6 years old. So I think forward-looking, this is going to be the big battle. I really think there might be a play stoppage, which nobody wants. But coming up in the future, $10, $11 billion business like the NFL, at a minimum, they should guarantee most, if not all, of these contracts.
Right, and even if just a percentage. Now, one
Correct.
more. Speaking of that, and we're talking with Steve Callis. He's with the. I've got to remember. I've been calling it the Mount Vernon Post for years, but the Westchester Post. He's their sports guy. Paying college Division I athletes. Finally, they're going to allow them to get some endorsements. How do these schools, in good conscience, they make hundreds, probably tens of millions of dollars, and they don't pay these guys? And then when they get hurt, they lose their scholarships as well. It's insane.
No, it's a total disgrace, and I can tell you, we talked last week. I played baseball at NYU when they had a good D1 program, and it's a job. The one thing,
Of course it is.
I would say to anyone who's going to play any sport in college, even at Division 2 or 3 levels, this is a job. You work 6 days a week.
Yeah.
You're on the road all the time. You miss a ton of classes, and if you want to be a student, and a lot of these guys do, but some of these guys are just looking, for example, just get me to the NFL or just get me to the NBA or whatever. But this is a job, and it's really a big awakening when you leave high school, where you walk down to the local field and practice from 3:30 to 5:30, and your games were either in Manhattan or the Bronx. I went to Power Memorial. As you know, we usually played either like in Central Park or Harris Field or wherever. It wasn't such a time problem, but when you go to Florida for 10 days like we did, to come back to New York because it was so cold up here and snowy still, you know the drill in April.
Absolutely.
Even the end of March. I think these guys absolutely should get paid. The notion that everybody else, to look what the coaches make. So, yes, I think they – and this is only – what they're talking about now is only for use of their likeness and stuff. That's only going to be for stars, essentially. But these guys should get paid. I understand the argument. You get a full scholarship, and that's worth a lot of money.
Oh, God.
But, frankly, in my opinion, a lot of these guys at the highest levels wouldn't even be going to college.
Do you know what? The money they get, maybe it's worth a couple of $100,000. Did you know in the American Hockey League, and I'm only using it as an example because I know it, it's the one minor league where guys make a living. You can make $400,000 a year. So they should knock that nonsense off. Now, one other question about college sports, and I just want to get a roundup from you. Why has college baseball, never really caught on? Even hockey now has the Frozen Four. College baseball just doesn't have that cachet, and yet these players.
Well,
are
I can
good.
tell you, certainly the problem where we live is the weather.
Yes.
I mean, I remember Syracuse had a baseball team, and they just dropped it in the late '70s. I think just because of the weather. I think, frankly, look, I love baseball. I'm a baseball guy. We can talk hockey all you want. I'm cool with that. But as a sport, everybody wants everything to be quicker, and what's happened to baseball? A Yankee-Red Sox game is 4 hours now. If you go look at the World Series of yore, the 20s, 30s, 40s, the games literally were an hour and 50 or 2 hours and 15. 2.5 hours was a long game. That's like two-thirds of a Yankee-Red Sox game now. So I think part of it is the sport itself, and again, I'm a baseball guy.
Me
but
too.
They've never found a way to really make it, frankly, quicker, more interesting. So I think that's part of the problem. But you can go to places, USC, Arizona State.
Oh, I
down
watched
in
some of those
Texas,
games,
mostly,
yeah.
Right, mostly in the South. It's high level, and it is pretty popular. Omaha, the College World Series every year, they get gigantic crowds. But I think it can't match football and basketball. And the final thing I'll say about baseball, and you know this because you played, hardest game to play, hardest game to be good at, hardest game to coach, hardest game to analyze. It's such a nuanced game, and still room for the relatively smaller or normal person, if you will. But I think it's so hard. And what I've seen with not my son, but with people he plays with, we try baseball, we're no good, we strike out, we can't hit a curveball. We're done by the time we're 12 and out of the Little League, and that's a big problem for baseball.
That is a big problem, and do you know what? I know I said it to you last week, but especially as a kid who grew up in Brooklyn, when I drive by all of these ball fields here in Westchester and kids are never on them, I want to be 12 again. Because that's how you learn to hit the curveball. It's not just when you're in high school.
But
coach.
it's empty, and you need repetition.
Yep.
I made my son a switch hitter in high school, and everybody used to get 10 pitches. And if you're a switch hitter, you're supposed to get 10 righty, 10 lefty, and the coach only gave him 5 righty and 5 lefty.
Dope.
That's not the way to teach baseball. If I could say one more thing, I know you
Please
have a
do.
great guest coming up next.
She's all right.
She's great. At WestchesterCountyPost.com, I have an article up about Shoeless Joe Jackson 100 years later, and I'd like you to read it because there's no way that Shoeless Joe Jackson fixed the 1919 World Series, and because of the whole dopey Pete Rose rule, if you're on the permanently ineligible list, you can't be in the Hall of Fame, which we can talk about another time. That cemented any chance Shoeless Joe Jackson had to get in. But I'd like you to read it. I will read it.
I will read it, and where I agree with you, I don't think they should ever let a gambler back in baseball, but Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe belong in the Hall of Fame for sure. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Steve Callis, everybody, read him. Watch what he posts in the Westchester Post. Thank you so very much, and we're going to talk well, with his boss in a few minutes. She is the editor and chief and publisher of the Westchester Post. Started out as the Mount Vernon Post, and I expect that she's going to join us momentarily. You're listening to the one, the only Radio Westchester. We are live at the train station. The sun is shining, the skies are clear, and the temperature, we're just trying to check it here. I've got a thermometer on the wall. It's getting up now about 51. It's going to get up to the mid-50s today, and we go to our next guest. She's a videographer. She is a degree in public health. She helps people in prisons who are trying to transition. She is a newspaper publisher and editor, the Westchester Post. Please welcome Janelle Albritton. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Pretty well. I just got off the phone with Steve. We solved the world.
Yes, I was listening.
Oh, good. See, that's not good that you were listening because I was going to tell you a lie. He says actually, he whispered to me before we went on the air. You're a miserable boss, he says. He's done with you.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, now he just told us about some of the features. I want to cover a couple of bases here. Now, do you still publish as a separate entity the Mount Vernon Post, or is it now just the Westchester Post?
I am making a final decision on that soon because really the success of print tends to be more hyper local, but for sure. I do plan to go back into print as soon as I can. You know how it is setting up all this digital stuff.
Oh, God, yes.
It's taken a little longer than I thought it would, and I've had to learn some new technologies. But I fully intend to do both. Hopefully by I don't even want to say right now, but soon. I love the print, and people love the print. People
I love the print
contacting me.
Oh, I want to ask you about a couple of things. Have you had your ear to the ground in Mount Vernon? I've been kind of Sean Patterson Howard has showed up for hits, and it surprises me. Andre Wallace has bailed a couple of times. We set whole hours aside for him. And he didn't call in or even let us know he wasn't doing it. And you know my philosophy. I always call out candidates when they do that, even if I personally like them. And I called out Sean Patterson Howard. She never did it again. And it's not about me or the radio. What it's more about is how do these people expect the public to trust their responsiveness when they turn away free advertising or don't respond to a phone call? It's really a dynamic. In fact, we got a couple of people here in New Rochelle that are just hiding under their beds because they're in a party that gets a lot of votes and they don't even want to come out and tell people who they are. So
wow.
So anyway, so you know me, that's one of my things. Under the bus you go. So are you following that race at all?
I am a little bit. I have been following this whole journey for a few years, and I just have such a sense of compassion for everyone in Mount Vernon.
Me too.
We are battered and bruised, and we just need stability, and we just want to move forward. And I think whether Andre or Sean wins, I think we're going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be, terrible in either direction. There's lots of conversation about that, but I do think either one of them could win. I don't think anyone should take anything for granted. I think everyone should get out and vote and make sure that they cast their vote for the one they want. And, it's interesting to watch this thing with the hospital happen, too. That's a whole other dynamic.
It came up at a good time because it showed us a little bit about the candidates. Now, just to be brutally honest, which I wanted to be, now, I won't tell you who, but I don't agree with your assessment that they'll be okay regardless of who. In fact, I'm not sure that they'll be okay regardless of who, if you know what I mean. But I won't say that till after the election. The people of Mount Vernon should make their choice. But if any city ever needed, I mean, a real fresh, you should run. Somebody that's never been in elected office in that town or had anything to do with the city, they need somebody to come in so cold new. Because, even no matter who I interview in that town, it's like, especially if I bring up the controller, it's like I don't know if she has pictures of people with farm animals, but boy, are they reluctant to talk honestly about her. And I mean, they may think they're talking honestly, but it's if and, but well, I have a good relationship. What the hell does a good relationship have to do with what is somebody's fiduciary responsibility? I mean, that's like, I don't have a good relationship with my banker, so he doesn't show me my money. You know, we have an expression in Brooklyn that I want to use on the air, but I won't yet. But it sounds like this: "Get the bleep out of here." But I want to use the whole word anyway. So, what are you covering? What story is you doing, my friend?
Well, this past week has been very busy. I feel like I'm actually the one working for Steve Callis because he's just handing me all these stories, and we're shooting great video, and it's my job to look at it and upload it, produce it, and get it onto the website.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what's been occupying me. You know, I've been all about the World Series for the last few days. So people check on that today and tomorrow. Everything should be up. And he's got some really great commentary, as you know.
Yes, he does, and we had some pretty good conversations. Now, how is your singing? I did neglect to say this. Again, though, my guest is Janelle Albritton. She does so many different things. She's the publisher and editor of the Westchester Post, also a separate entity, the Mount Vernon Post, hyper-local, that particular publication. She does work in public health. She's a videographer, and she is a jazz singer. Got any gigs coming up? Have you been singing?
I do. I anticipate confirming it today, but formerly known as the Old Stone Mill in Tuckahoe.
I know it.
I may be there on a regular basis. They're rebranding it to be DeNapoli Stone Mill.
Well, we like it. Hey, DeNapoli, how you doing? We have to give it a Brooklyn flair.
Gene DeNapoli, who's also an artist, he's working on bringing in live music, and as a publisher, I'm committed to helping support restaurants and bars and other venues that support live entertainment. But it looks like unofficially, just between you and me, we don't tell too many other people. But
yeah, that's it.
I might be there every Thursday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh, that's good.
Starting November 13th, but that'll be. That remains to be seen.
When it's official, you'll have to call us and let us know. We'll make an announcement about it. We like to take care of our own here. You're listening to Radio Westchester. Okay. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. We are live at the New Rochelle train station. We're talking with Janelle Albritton, the publisher of the Westchester Post. And how has that been received as opposed to your original publication, the Mount Vernon Post? How has it been received?
So far, so good.
And what's typical of your coverage? What are you talking about?
Well, I've got in my lane, my area of specialty is wellness. So, like for example, next week, I am in conversations with the Mount Vernon commissioner of the fire department to conduct classes on tapping, because I want to help people quit smoking.
Oh, I always kid you about it. Don't remember, you owe me a tapping to stop my shoulder ache. You have to tap my head or something, Where do you tap for a shoulder problem?
Well, it's there's no particular place, but I can send you a link. It's on my playlist of YouTube, TFT NYC, and then you find the tapping playlist. And I like the Power Reboot video.
Okay.
I recommend that. It's about 8 minutes long. You can follow it step by step.
Honest question about tapping. How much of it, what is the agent? What is where the rubber meets the road? How much of it is, in the good sense, placebo because you're being touched by another human being?
Well, actually, tapping is something that I teach people to do themselves.
Yes, okay.
So it really is about the tapping, the vibration that's going into the acupuncture point on the body.
Uh-huh.
There are very specific tapping points that are based on the oriental body map of the acupuncture system.
Mm-hmm.
And so over years of research, a man named Roger Callahan found that there were certain points in particular, if done in a certain order, would help resolve symptoms in 80% of the cases. So that's why he called them the algorithm. It was just a really a good common combination that would pretty much, cure what ails you, so to speak. But he found an 8-point sequence which seemed to really work very, very well for PTSD. And there are stories about that are just really amazing. He's been working with the veterans with a VA hospital in the 1980s. Congress knows about it. They've been discussing it for a number of years, tapping into the mainstream healthcare for veterans.
Anything that'll help.
Press.
Anything that'll help veterans with PTSD. Because, my grandmother used to do something when I was a kid. And I'm not saying that this is the case in tapping, but it is the power of in the best sense, what the mind can do. She used to do this thing where if you had a headache, she'd pass your head. And in other words, she'd be tapping your head, if you will, like, right on my head, and probably saying some of the rosary. And it was called passing your head. And 75% of the time, I felt better. It's kind of interesting. It's very fascinating stuff.
And some of that too is just, the nurturing from someone you love. That's a powerful thing. But there are lots of acupuncture points on the top of the head. One thing I would like to say in answer to your question, my area of expertise in my writing is wellness, and so I tend to focus on that. I also like writing about food and restaurant reviews. So my friend Terry Girardi is working with me on that. Mm-hmm. Steve is talking about sports, and he crosses over into wellness. We did a radio show recently on CTE and NFL players. So, sports and wellness there's a lot of overlap there.
Funny, I don't know if he's still listening. We ran out of time with Steve, but a hockey player whom he would know, very famous for, you probably know about the 1980 Olympic hockey team, Miracle on Ice, that whole deal. Well, one of their players who later went on to play for the Rangers was committed yesterday.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was actually had to be committed. He had a fight with a neighbor. He wound up and this guy was not a fighter as a player. He was a real nifty Minnesota forward, about 5'8", not big, but he's now, they had to commit him and get him help. He was deemed not fit to stand trial, about 61 years old.
And that's sad. And this connects with another point that I was wanting to, like next time you and I sit down and just have a conversation. I'm sad about these veterans because Veterans Day is coming up. It's November, so my thoughts are going to the veterans and first responders as well, which are often veterans. And I'm really sad about news on these veterans being deported because of Trump administration policies. And the reason is that they were arrested for crimes.
Yes.
And so they somehow lose their green card or citizenship status because of the crimes they committed. But I'm wondering, we all know that so many veterans don't get the care that they need. And to the extent that they either have PTSD or veterans could also have CTE, head trauma.
Well, yeah, of course.
Getting in active duty. So to what extent is this unruly behavior or criminal behavior connected to the medical explanation of PTSD and possibly CTE in veterans?
I think that they need to look at that. Clearly, the suspicion is of this hockey player that I mentioned to you that CTE was a problem. And more they're examining the brains of some of these athletes, and hopefully they will do it for veterans as well. Janelle Albritton, is I guess your paper now is running. You update it every day. But where can people go to find these news articles on your Westchester Post?
It's going to be westchestercountypost.com. We've done the soft launch. And we'll be doing our big launch next week. Things are moving forward. But if you've got any comment, you can contact us on the website. And if you have any topic that you'd like to see covered or any writing that you'd like to submit, that is more than welcome. I would love to hear from you. And, send in your stories, send in your pictures, and because I like this to be a community-based publication.
Okay, thank you very much, Janelle Albritton. We'll talk to you again next week, and we'll talk off air before that. Thank you so very much. Janelle Albritton, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
The Westchester County Post. We'll be right back with one of your favorite people, Jake Schaefer. His pick of the week coming up at 8:20. We're into the 8 o'clock hour. It is 8:07. Thank you for listening to Radio Westchester. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. As we enter the 8 o'clock hour now, just a couple of headlines for you, some brief story coverage, and then we want to talk to our man about town. Also, at 8:20, his picks. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, a Marrone woman was sentenced yesterday to 25 years to life in prison for killing her 2.5-year-old daughter last year. Cynthia Arce is in a special category, said the judge, just a very special category of evil. And he said this about the 30-year-old Westchester woman. Gabrielle's father, Stephen Boyd, spent most of his victim impact statement addressing Arce, who he called an evil, selfish baby killer. You will remember back in 2018, the couple had shared custody of Gabriella, who lived with her mother and maternal grandmother. But on the day before the killing, on April 28, Boyd had obtained a court order granting him custody because of concerns Arce posed. And police would not enforce the order. And we're still, that is the press and other investigators, still looking into why there has been no change in procedure involving the police, the Department of Social Services at the county, and the judge and judges in those situations. Hopefully they'll look at that too. She's got 25 years to life. Yesterday up in White Plains, a possible computer error led to a massive police response right before dismissal time at White Plains High School. The school went well into the lockdown at 1:55. Went into lockdown at 1:55 p.m. It was lifted about an hour later. The school district and the public safety officer have not yet concluded why the false alarm happened. Now, the school district does a lot of, if you will, fire drills, quote unquote, for shootings and active shooter scenarios. So somehow that all got triggered, and they're looking into it. But all's well, ends well. Didn't end so well for a trick-or-treater here in New Rochelle last night, Jake. Powerful winds created a frightening Halloween for one youngster. A 9-year-old girl here in New Rochelle, this in who's 12, by the way, in New Rochelle, was felled by a tree last night at 6:30 on Maywood Road here in Beechmont Woods. She was taken to Jacoby Medical Center, and we don't have any update on her condition. And the president is now an official Florida resident. He and his wife have filed for domicile in Florida. He, although was criticized by the governor, unfortunately, who got down to that level and said, good riddance, literally, last night to the news. But the president said while he loves New York and its people, he's not happy with the taxes that he pays, and millions of dollars, of course, and he's not happy with the way he's treated by local and state public officials. But also, let's be not be politically naive. Those 29 electoral votes are probably going to look pretty good. Today's program is brought to you by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. The 8 o'clock hour certainly is a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena and Khan, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And Dominic's Cigars, they sponsor, and about 10 minutes from now, we'll cover that part. We probably talk a little bit, but we won't let it be official until 8:20. Dominic's Fine Cigars are bringing you this week's football picks. They're a licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. And we thank them for their patronage with us, of course. Let's take a look at the weather. And the weather today is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the temperature is 50, getting up to 55, not much more. No chance of rain. It's quite sunny right now, which is nice to see, but windy. We still have gusts out there. Some gusts have been over 30 miles an hour. We do expect that to dissipate. Tonight, clear skies, but it will be cold. The temperature will be getting down to 34. The wind out of the northwest at 5 miles an hour. And Saturday, mostly sunny skies, an average temperature of 52. Sunday, more sunny skies, a high of 51. But the overnight low, once again, getting down to 35. Jake's in the house. Lord knows he comes in. He's doing all this studying for his picks of the week. Jake, in a little while, we're going to make it official and have your picks of the week. But a lot going on in the sports world. I was talking with the people from the Post about it, but from the Westchester County Post. But I always like to get your take, as you're a little closer to it. You have on your uniform, your Syracuse outfit, with a Milwaukee Brewers hat that we don't even pay attention to.
Real hodgepodge.
Would you pay Division I athletes?
Of course.
Okay, and
They generate a lot of revenue.
and why do you think they don't? Selfishness?
Well, do you pay the hockey player as much as you pay the football player? Do you equal pay?
No, but why? But my question is, why don't we pay Division I athletes?
Well, I think it makes complete sense. If a kid's jersey's selling, millions of dollars, he should get a little taste of that.
Oh, I'm with you, by the way, and it's just something that bothers me. Now let's talk a little bit about your picks of the week, nonetheless. What have you got cooking?
Got a few picks. Not confident in them all. I could just rest on my
What do you mean
laurels.
you're not confident? We'll make it official in a moment. What do you mean you're not confident?
I've got two I like.
Well, tell us what games you've looked at before we make it official.
I've looked at every single game.
Which 3 games are you going to call? But don't tell us
I
yet.
got 4.
You got 4. Which 4 games are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to do the Sunday night game, the Ravens and the Patriots. I'm going to do the Lions-Oakland game, and I will do the 2 local games. I would like to do just the 2 games, the Lions game and the Patriots game, just to pad my stats and rest on my laurels, but I will go with 4.
Now, when you're coming up with your picks, I mean, for the rest of us, it's I like their uniforms or they've got this guy or that guy. How scientific do you get?
Well, when I make my picks, I will go into details on how I came to the picks.
Oh, you will go into details for us how you came to the picks. Okay.
I'm looking at the odds for next year's World Series, and
Tell us about them.
some interesting teams. I like the Tampa Bay Rays at 28-1. I might put $10 on the Rays.
That's right. Then you get
$280.
That's pretty good.
The Yankees are at 5-1.
Who's the biggest one?
Let's see with the Mets. The Mets are 18-1.
Wow. Go ahead.
The longest shot are the Orioles and the Tigers at 2,000-1, and of course the Astros are the favorite at 9-2.
They're still the favorite. So who's second?
Yankees, and
Third.
then the Dodgers, and then the
Dodgers.
Nats at 10-1.
Well, the Nats.
I think the Nats are going to lose Strasburg and probably Rendon.
Why don't they just pay the price for these guys?
I don't think
and
they
keep
can
them?
afford both of them.
They can't afford both.
No,
of them.
I think they're both max players.
Now, one guy earlier today said that Garrett Cole is going to get the biggest contract that any ball player or any pitcher's ever got.
Yeah, did you hear Garrett Cole after the game, the World Series, when
What'd
they
he
wanted
say?
to interview him? He said, I'm no longer an employee of this team, so I don't have to be interviewed. And he wasn't wearing an Astros hat. He was wearing his agent's hat. So I think he's pretty much gone.
Why would he do that, though? Why would he be
I think he was very
disrespectful?
frustrated that he didn't get into the
That
game.
he didn't get into the
Yeah.
game? Ah.
So he's wearing his Scott Boras hat instead of a Houston Astros hat.
Major League Baseball should fine him.
So where does he go? I think he goes, will the Angels pay him?
I hope he
They've
doesn't
got-
go to the Yankees. I didn't know he was a creep.
He's California guys. A lot of people think he's going to go to the Angels, but the Angels have Mike Trout, a $400 million contract, which is totally justified, but can they afford another monster contract in Garrett Cole?
One of the early people to get a monster contract, and then, of course, he blew it up with drugs, was Josh Hamilton. He got arrested again the other day. I don't know if you saw that.
I heard that. It was
What was this? How good was he? And would he still be playing if he wasn't? Didn't
Oh,
have all
of
the
course,
drug
he was a
problem?
phenom.
He really was, wasn't he? They say he didn't even come up to the majors till he was 26 or so because of his drug problems.
The monkey was on his back.
What was the end of his career? Who was he with? Do you know?
Maybe the Rangers. I know he was with California.
Because I know
the
he was
Rays
he
drafted him number
he
one.
beating up his daughter this time. So
Yeah,
he's getting-
supposedly.
he was really good.
Oh,
Home
he was a
runs.
phenom.
He was a phenom.
He was so good the teams hired a bodyguard just to shadow him around.
That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. And he still wound up finding his drugs.
Yeah.
He could want to go the way of Steve. Do you remember Steve Howe? It was before
course, yeah.
the pitcher. He had a bad cocaine problem.
Yeah.
And he since died, I think, in a car accident, by the way. He lived up in Montana someplace.
Has he?
Steve, he was a good pitcher. Good
Yeah.
relief pitcher. But it's different. Okay, what about relief pitchers? Any of them going to be changing teams? Do you think Chapman stays with the Yankees?
I'm sure he'll opt out. I'm not sure if the Yankees are going to pay him, though.
It's the only sport, because of the luck involved in it, where you can screw up and still get a big contract. It's just like he should have been the GOAT of the whole postseason.
Well,
And
we
yet
saw
he's going to make more money.
the bullpen is very important in the regular season, but we saw the two teams with the worst bullpens make it to the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that tell you?
Now, what about this guy Harris? The guy who gave up 2 home runs in 2 games. Is he a better pitcher otherwise than that?
He's a good pitcher, and the manager said after Game 6, Harris was exhausted, so why did he bring Harris in?
Everybody keeps asking that. Now, I don't know. My guess is he looked like he threw pretty hard to me. It didn't seem that gassed. But Garrett Cole, I guess maybe Garrett Cole was upset that he got him up twice, but I don't know. When you are getting millions and millions of dollars from a team and you don't like a decision that they made, to not wear your hat when you're still, to me, you're still getting paid until you get out of the
And
clubhouse.
technically, he was still an employee of the team.
Yeah, and I'd say good riddance to him. That's why I was so glad when the Giants got rid of the great receiver.
Shockey?
No, the one last year.
Oh, Beckham.
Yeah, just please. And, appreciate the life you have. All righty, it's time. It's coming up on 8:20. We like you to make your plans around this. For those of you who like to gamble, for those of you who like to gamble football. Now, what is your record right now?
7-2 on the year, not counting. It
7-2.
should be 8-1, but Mr. Breeze decided to play last week.
Not should be's. 7-2. Don't pull in a
Put a little
Aroldis Chapman
asterisk on
me.
that too, around that too.
No, 7-2 so far. We got the Ravens game, the Lions game, the Jet game, the Giant game. So first, it's time for Jake's picks of the week. Just wait a second now,
Is this
Jake.
new?
Will he continue his record of success, or will he lose his money and perhaps some of yours if you take his advice? It's time for Jake's picks of the week. This week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, New York. All righty, it's time. Jake, welcome back to the broadcast. Jake Schaefer, he's our handicapper, and he actually does put his real money out there on these picks. All right, give us your picks. What's number one? Wait,
All right,
and wait the lock till the end. Your lock of the week till the end. What do we got?
All right, we'll start on Sunday night in Baltimore. The Ravens have an exciting young quarterback,
Who are they playing against?
but that is exactly what he is, a young quarterback.
They're playing who? Who are they playing?
Coach Belichick is coming to town, and that is his specialty, young quarterbacks. Give me the Patriots giving 3.5. I like the Lions a lot this year. This is a good time for them to show it. They're getting 2 on the road in Oakland. Give me the Lions.
Lions with 2. Okay.
I don't like either of these local games. I probably should
Who are
just
the
pick-
Lions playing?
The Lions are playing the Oakland Raiders.
Oaks, okay.
I don't like either of these local games. I probably should just rest on my laurels and just sit on the 2 picks, but I'm gonna go with them.
Which ones?
The local games,
But which team?
the Jets and the Giants.
Which one first?
I will go with the Jets first. I don't know what to think about this Jets game in
Who
Miami.
are they playing?
Miami, Bob. Miami. In Miami, the line started at 5.5 in favor of the Jets. It has crept down to 3. I will follow the line. Give me the Dolphins getting 3 at home against the lowly Jets.
Wow. Okay. And the Giant game.
Monday night at Giant Stadium. Daniel Jones isn't ready for this, I do not think. I'm not huge on the Cowboys, but I think the Giants stink. Give me the Cowboys favored by 7 on the road against the Giants Monday night.
Okay, now what's your lock of the week?
I think I got to go with the Patriots as the lock of the week.
How could you not? Why is it even only 3.5? Why is the line?
It's in Baltimore and it is Sunday night, so it should be. I mean,
what's the
crowd gonna
Ravens'
really-
record?
What?
What's the Ravens' record?
The Ravens.
I mean,
Ravens are
they got a
decent
rookie
this year.
quarterback.
No, they have a second-year quarterback.
Even so, he's a young boy.
Young quarterback, very exciting quarterback.
Brady's going to eat this kid alive.
The Ravens are 5-2,
Only 3.5.
but
If I'm Belichick, I'm insulted by that. That is a great game. How did the Patriots aren't going to lose that game?
I can't see it.
3.5. They'll win by a touchdown or 2. This is done. This is easy money. Bet the ranch.
Is that your lock?
That's my lock, but
All
what's
right,
yours?
So we agreed. We both agreed last week as well. We took the Packers last week. We hit that one, and I think
Is that your lock of the? That's your lock of the week as
Patriots,
well.
yeah.
So, folks, the lock of the week: the Patriots with 3.5. That's all you're giving, 3.5 to the Baltimore Ravens. I think we're going to have some dead birds by the end of Sunday.
also Lions on the road getting 2 against the Raiders. I like the Lions, and I think this is about the time of year when Gruden and the Raiders go into the tank. Interesting game. Jets at Miami. Again, that line just shows me all of Vegas is shifting towards Miami, so I'm going to take the lead, and I will take the Dolphins getting 3. You got to love a home underdog. And I just think the Giants stink. Daniel Jones isn't ready for Monday Night Football. I think I don't like the Cowboys that much either, but I think they will beat the Giants by 7 at least on Monday night.
I'm going to go back to this Jet game. Is Miami that bad that it's only
Miami's
a 3-point
terrible.
spread? But yet, if you take Miami, you get 3 points.
Yeah,
They consider
and they are
worse.
at home.
They can. Oh, that's why.
So the Jets could win 28-26, and you would still win.
You would still win. Now,
I mean, it
typically,
could be a 2-0 game.
what is the
Jets
average
could win
bet? You
2-0.
must know other people that gamble. We don't want to share your business with them. But how much are people betting on these games? I know in the aggregate it's billions, but what does a typical person bet on a Sunday who's betting?
Well, what I like to do is I like these four games. So I'll put $10 down, and if I hit them all, I get 200.
Oh, okay. So you put
It's called
10.
parlay.
Oh, yeah, I know. Like in horse racing.
Yeah.
So that's what you do. So in other words, if one of them doesn't, you don't win unless you bet
You
those.
got to go
games.
4 for 4.
Do you bet the lock of the week at least separately?
Of course, that one we're gonna put a couple bucks on the Patriots.
I got to go mortgage the house on this Patriots game. All right, before we send you on your way, this is pretty cool stuff. I like these. One more time. Give them the picks of the week, one by one. Let them hear, folks. Write it down if you want to be as successful as Jake is. He's 7-2. Go ahead.
Patriots favored by 3.5 on the road against the Ravens. Lions on the road getting 2 against the Raiders. Dolphins at home getting 3 against the pitiful Jets. Cowboys favored by 7 Monday night at Giants Stadium. Week 9 in the NFL.
And I want to add, he's 7-2, folks.
Should be
7-2. You know, all right, we got to go there. What did I? Oh, I see. I turned my sound off. You can't. What you should be. You can't do a should. What you're saying is if a player but was he on the hurt list? What happened? How come he didn't play?
No, he was listed as a doubtful when I made the picks.
Oh, and then he played.
And then he happened to show up on Sunday.
Oh, poor baby. I'm so sorry. Hey, how's the wind over there in Larchmont?
The wind?
Did you guys have wind today?
Yes, a lot of wind.
A lot of wind.
Yeah, it's cold. Very cold.
Garbage cans flying around.
I had to put on my Syracuse sweatshirt.
I'm still trying to figure out why you wear a Mariners hat or whatever that is.
Milwaukee Brewers.
Milwaukee Brewers.
Big
God.
fan.
Always were you?
No, I had a nice trip in Milwaukee, and I liked the hat, so I picked it up at the airport.
Big cheese people. All righty. Thank you very much, Jake Schaefer. While you're at it, you voting? Do you have anybody you voting today or this week?
Of course.
Oh, that was not very convincing.
It's my patriotic duty.
It is your patriotic duty. Okay. We
I was at the DMV earlier this week, and it is the DMV on White Plains. Hell on earth.
The DMV, I've spent hours there.
Oh my God, I just did.
Like to re-register a car from another state, you want to hang yourself.
I had to get a new New York State ID.
And then what will happen is you go on the line, right? And they'll give you a list of things to get. And you'll do everything they said. And then you'll go back and they say, but what about this item? You didn't ask me for that item. And then you got to go home again. And you got to get that. Then you got to come back. Then you got to wait on one line. Then you wait on another line. Then they take your picture.
I showed up, sat down. 20 minutes later, they called me. Had to go get my picture taken. So I was like, 20 minutes, that's it? Great. Took my picture. All right, you're back online. 4 hours later, I was on my way home.
You got to bring a book or your cell phone with stuff on it. All righty, we're going to take a break. In a couple of minutes, we're going to talk with the great doctor. He is, of course, Dr. I got to look at, my printer gave me a problem again. Not the printer. I can't print and get stuff out of my WinBook. I've been screaming at it all morning, so I've had to write it hand. Dr. Victor in script. Dr. Victor Sternberg will be with us. You know him as the longtime host of Politics and Your Health. We'll be talking Your Health coming up at 8:35, some 4 or 5 minutes from now. We'll take him through the end of the show. And Hezi Harris is back. We'll get his Yonkers report. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. Now remember, you can vote today. We have early voting throughout New York. We know it's an off-year election. We're trying to get people out to vote, folks. It's important. You can vote here in New Rochelle over at 90 Buford Place. That's where the entrance is. It's actually the back of City Hall over on North Avenue. It's the street behind it. And today, the voting is open from 9 o'clock to 4 p.m. Tomorrow, 12 to 5 p.m. And Sunday, 12 to 5 p.m. No voting on Monday. Don't go Monday, Jake. And you can vote, of course, on Election Day. We'll be right back. We have returned as we head to the bottom of the hour now, the bottom of the 8 o'clock hour. The temperature's still 50, getting up to 55 today. It is a lovely day if you like the fall. The wind's a pain in the neck, though. It's going to get cold tonight, getting down to 34. A story just came across one of our screens, and we're going to share it with you. And this speaks even more loudly to the problems that we've had with people not wanting to get their children vaccinated for measles. They're discovering that measles, it's off CNN, measles can erase the immune system's memory, leaving us vulnerable to other diseases we were previously protected against. This is new research. 2 separate studies published Thursday in the journals of Science and Science Immunology found that the highly contagious and potentially fatal measles virus can give you what's called immune amnesia. And folks, we're not talking about Joe's dental clinic on the corner. We're talking about researchers from the Harvard Medical School who led the science study, examined blood samples from children before and after getting measles. So we're going to be bringing that up with the good doctor in just a few minutes. So when he calls, I'm still betwixt and between about this one. I'm still amazed that we have people who don't get their kids vaccinated in this day and age. And I really encourage the authorities. I admired Ed Day. We had him on a couple of times from Rockland County, that he put his foot down and said, no, this is unacceptable. If you don't vaccinate your kid, the kid can't come to school. And now the state and some other states are getting pushback as well from the Pennsylvania Dutch, if you will, communities. They now don't want their children to be vaccinated, saying it's religious freedom. Good grief. Imagine no religion. But we went through that all week with Vince, haven't we? As we move on now to 8:33. In terms of voting, I want to remind you one more time what the big races are. Here in New Rochelle, you have the mayor, the long-standing mayor, Noam Bramson, 13 years in the job. Part of it, he was not elected, but he inherited from his predecessor when he moved to a county job. 25 years in total if you count his time on the city council. He's the Democrat, been very popular over the years, has generally won his elections handily. He is running against upstart Brendan Conroy. Brendan comes from a political family. His mother had been a city council person here in New Rochelle. His grandfather, of course, well known in his day, Malcolm Wilson, the former governor of New York. He's running on the Republican ticket. In District 5, and we'll work our way from north. We're not going to cover the ones that are uncontested. We have two young upstarts there running against each other. The Democrat is Sarah Kay, and the Republican is Sarah Langlois. They're running for District 5. That seat, Barry Fertel. He is, of course, now how did I miss it? I'm looking right at the computer. How did I miss this? Barry Fertel has retired, and or is retiring from that seat in District 5. And in District 1, we have a long-time incumbent. Mr. Lou Trangucci, and Lou is been there for 12 years as well. And we'll be right with you. Our guest is on the line. He is running in District 1, 12-year incumbent there. He's a Republican conservative. He is running against the Democrat, Martha Lopez, with whom we spoke this morning. Those are the big elections here. Probably the biggest local election, though, is over in Mount Vernon, a city that has had scandal after scandal and dysfunction after dysfunction. And the current acting mayor, who was in the space of 1 year a city councilman, a city council president, and now mayor, after the former mayor left because of a campaign finance irregularity. And at one point they had 3 mayors in 1 week, if that's possible. And he's actually a Democrat, but he's running on the Republican line. He's the acting mayor, but the Democratic nominee duly elected in a primary is Sean Patterson Howard. And that city needs all the help it can get. So please do get out and vote. All right, it is 8:35, coming up on 8:36. A man you all love. We know that you do from his time on the radio at several stations as the anchor and host of Politics in Your Health. Please welcome Dr. Victor Sternberg. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Bob. Happy post-Halloween night.
Yes, Doc, a story just came across, and I don't know if you saw this, in CNN. And I shared it with our listeners. Harvard Medical School just completed a study along with some other folks. They're finding out that if you get the measles, in many cases, it can wipe out your whole immune system. And it's not that it literally changes the biology, but that somehow you develop what they're calling immune amnesia. Have you ever heard of this before?
No, I have not. I know that some adults have died of getting the measles, but since many children got the measles in the past, and didn't have any. We didn't see this kind of outcome. I'm a little surprised. It's just if you get the measles as an adult or even as a child.
It
They
doesn't
talk about
say. I
that.
mean, I'm looking at it now. The measles can effectively undo the protection provided by vaccines against other infections like flu or even tuberculosis, and measles outbreaks can thus cause spikes in other illnesses.
Oh, I see. I understand.
And
So it's not that it wipes out your immune. Go ahead. I understand.
It's
Keep
sort of
going.
a form of amnesia, the way they wrote it. They said surviving measles patients to eventually regain these lost immunities, but they need to be re-exposed to the illnesses to build up those defenses.
Well, just another reason why the measles vaccine should be mandated,
Yeah,
not
well,
just optional.
You did see where, and I forget the actual, the Pennsylvania Dutch, they now are saying that their religion does not allow them to be vaccinated, and they're suing. This should be non-starters. I know politically people like to cater to the religions, and I understand that. But when it comes to public health, religion should have no place, Doc. I mean, this is me saying what you already know. But, why do we even take such things seriously?
Well, Bob, we have this confusion in our country between our rights and what the government can mandate and not mandate, and it's a uniquely American problem. The struggle between a collective good and individual rights, and you and I have talked about this. And when your individual right never interferes with me and doesn't cost me money and expense, then you're welcome to it. The problem is when your individual right crosses the line, so it affects my life and other people's lives. Then as a civilized society, we have to pass rules and regulations to protect the people from your rights. That's the bottom line. And it's a matter of philosophy, but to me it's not. It's a matter of common sense. That's all.
Doctor, there was a piece in the Times as we move forward, and again, I'm hearkening back to many of the shows that you and I did together. Again, my guest, Dr. Victor Sternberg, a very renowned periodontist here, but he's also very well known now as a talk show radio host, Politics and Your Health, which we will work out resurrecting here when he's done teaching. But more importantly, his concerns are prevention and then how the politics of our great nation affects your health. Doc, there was a piece in the paper today, and I know you've had this discussion with some of our callers in the past. There is this little bit of a blowback, not that no one's backing off the problems with opioids, but that people who suffer from chronic pain are getting very, very worried that they will get caught in the crossfire. How do we keep that from happening?
We have to limit the prescriptions to those subset of people for whom other non-narcotics have not worked. And there are certain people like that, but it's got to probably go through some kind of approval process where it's not totally the discretion of the doctor. It's got to go through some process whereby we demonstrate that previous non-narcotics have not been effective, number one. Number two, the amount of narcotics given to the patient must be limited and must be done repeatedly. Because, with the narcotics epidemic, people were getting, as one patient I know had 180 tablets of OxyContin, used 3 of them, and then the 177 were available to sell or to misuse. It has to be carefully regulated. And so people should not be concerned. However, just remember that it has to be at the very careful discretion of the medical establishment. And, I just read an interesting article that up to 25 to 30% of the people who became addicted to opioids received them for the first time at a physician or a dentist.
Of
so
course.
We have to now look at the cost-to-benefit ratio. There's a very small group of people who need opioids to survive without pain. It's probably a tiny percentage of the numbers who receive them.
Doctor, we talked a little bit about it last week, and I did a little more research about it. This woman from, I think it was Belgium. She had such intractable pain that even that they allowed her to employ their assisted suicide protocol. And she actually stayed alive longer than she thought because just knowing that she had that right gave her a little more courage to sustain the pain. Now, we laymen don't understand this. And I'm not talking about the person who gets addicted to opioids or even the person who doesn't but uses opioids or whatever else for bad pain. What kind of pain is so intractable that nothing helps? Is it, I'm almost tempted to say, is there such a thing?
Yeah, there are certain types of neurological pain that medication cannot dull. There's certain end-stage cancer patients that cannot be treated with opioids, that have to be given an intravenous continual drop of morphine, which they can take it almost to the level of their death. I mean, there are certain neurological and cancer pain at the end that can be intractable, and we are the last people to judge whether that person should be able to end their life. This gets on the other side of the coin about individual rights versus societal rights. If your death only affects you and it's done under the most arduously examined conditions, then that should be the right of an individual. I'm not here to say that you can't die because I believe religiously that's wrong if you're suffering and it can be demonstrated that you are suffering.
But doctor, we also read about things like so-called nerve blocks or somehow interfering with the connection between the brain and those. I mean, isn't there a way to clip that nerve somewhere along the line?
Yeah, they are. I've had patients who've had something called trigeminal neuralgia.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Which is a syndrome from the nerves in the brain, which send enormously painful stimuli to the patient's face. And those pains are intractable. And patients have had one particular patient, not the only one, who had to actually have those nerves cauterized. So there'd be no stimulus running into the face. And those pains could result in someone wanting to kill themselves. So there is ways of ameliorating those pains by actually ameliorating or ending the nerve endings. It has other effects. The patient's permanently numb, perhaps. But the bottom line is that it is necessary for some people, and it does work in those particular places where there is a direct connection between a nerve firing and pain.
Now, I've also read there are situations where somehow, and I guess it's sort of like the classic phantom pain when someone no longer has a limb, and I know that that's real, but where the pain is a result of something gone awry in the brain, that the nerve, there's nothing wrong with the nerve, but the brain thinks, if you will, that there is.
Phantom pain. Yeah.
That has to be just...
There's something called phantom limb pain.
Yes.
Where a part of the body was traumatized. And there's nothing going on with that part of the body, but any touch or stimulus of that part of the body sends a signal to the brain, and the brain only responds one way, pain. So there are people who have had legs removed, and they still have pain in their leg. And the brain is firing. Remember, all the pain you perceive is not where you feel it. You feel it in your finger, but it's being perceived in the brain. So there are ways of, I have patients that come to me that have dental pain. They swear that it's hurting them. I had one patient we had to take out. We did a root canal. She still had pain. We did a second root canal. She still had pain. We took out the tooth. She still had pain. At that point, she needed a tooth replaced. We put an implant in. She still had pain. At that point, I did some homework and spoke to some people who are specialists in phantom dental pain. And it's a neuroma. It's called a traumatic neuroma, where there's been an injury at the site where the patient had something that happened prior. And any stimulus, touching it, breathing, causes pain in the brain. And that is a different, and there are other medications you can take for that, Neurontin and others, but it is a real pain, and it exists even though there's no organ that's in trouble. The brain still feels pain. It's difficult to manage sometimes. It's not so simple.
It's interesting, and that's why they have, I know, these pain clinics. 8:45 coming up on 8:46. We're talking with Dr. Victor Sternberg. Doctor, apropos of this discussion, is there anything on the horizon to deal with this where people have intractable pain? I know that, again, they have clinics, but at the end of the day, with all our science, it's amazing we haven't solved this without having to drug people to death with opioids.
It's interesting. Let me give you, there may be in the future dealing with how to interfere with the transmission of pain, because let me give you a little story. Years ago, I had a patient who was selling magnets for pain. And I thought it was interesting, so I gave a set of the magnets to my dental hygienist who had foot pain, and the pain went away. So I introduced it to a neurologist patient of mine. I said, "What do you think of this?" He said, "I have these patients that have terrible foot pain from diabetes. It's a diabetic neuropathy, terrible pain in their feet, and it's also because of nerves being injured by the diabetes. So he did a study. He took a group of patients and he put these magnets in their shoes. And there was a significant difference in the pain that they perceived versus those who didn't get the magnets, got the placebo. So there is in the realm. Remember, pain transmission is electrical stimuli, just like plugging a wire in. That's how the nervous system works. If you can introduce another stimuli, such as in this case low-level magnetism, it seemed to block the stimuli from reaching the brain. That's where it's going to come from. Some people have TENS units, little electronic units they put on their back or part of the body, and the stimulation from the electricity from the TENS unit blocks the pain going to the brain from the actual cause.
I had a relative had that where they put that stim. See, now it goes to show you how you learn every day. I thought I was reasonably sophisticated about this stuff. I thought that magnets were one of those, snake oil treatments, but evidently not.
In this particular instance, where it had the magnetism, the magnetic field in the feet was enough to interfere with the stimuli in that particular situation. Whether it works, remember, this is chronic, not intense pain, but constant pain that by just the magnetism in these patients helped them. And they did a big study with 600 people, and it made them, not everybody felt better, but it was statistically significant difference. And that's what we don't quite understand, how this our neural system works. We're still, of all the areas of medicine that we struggle most with treating, it's the nervous system because it is the most complex.
A little bit about pain as relates to diabetes, et cetera. Maybe talk about diabetes a little bit. Maybe it was 6-7 years ago now, I interviewed a doctor who had literally done and still experimented with not spleen, but pancreatic transplants. Now, we transplant every other organ, and obviously diabetes is a failure of that organ, is it not, in terms of insulin? How come those don't work? How come they don't work?
Well, they've done some of them in cases of other organ transplants. They've limited it to someone's getting, for instance, a liver transplant. They will then perhaps transplant at the same time, transplant the pancreas. The problem is that, the body's immune system often attacks these things. The issue with, just like with heart transplants and with liver transplants, that there is a lifespan to them, number one. Number two, the patient has to be on significant anti-rejection mechanism of medications. They have side effects. So there's no free lunch in this area. To just carte blanche transmitting everybody, you'll have a significant number of people that go through the morbidity of the operation and may reject the pancreas. And so we're having enough trouble getting kidneys these days.
Yeah. No, but even
I think that.
But doctor, if I may, but even within the context of, let's put an assumption in that may not be the case. But as I understand it, the assumption is that even if the rejection drugs were well tolerated and worked, that the pancreas isn't performing the services as other organs do. Yes. Could be a heart or a kidney. Yes. Do we know why?
We don't know why. There's something we don't really understand why people even lose the function of the pancreas. We know that obesity can contribute to the diminished functioning of insulin, but why people become type 1 diabetics and all of a sudden their pancreas is completely inert. There's something genetically, and then the autoimmune system, the order of the body just destroys it, and the same mechanism may destroy the second pancreas.
A dear friend of mine's relative just went through what they call Whipple surgery because of a block in their pancreatic duct, and it could be cancerous or not. But what is this Whipple? It's supposed to be Whipple surgery, drastically removal of organs and such.
Yeah, well, it's one of the Hail Marys of pancreatic cancer. I've known people who have gone through it. It is extremely difficult to recover from. And in terms of pancreatic cancer, it has not made a large difference in the outcome of pancreatic patients.
What about quality of life for a year or so?
Well, that's interesting. The patients I've known that have had pancreatic cancer, as they progress the disease, it is a very difficult downhill course. I've lost, in the last 2 years, I've lost 5 patients from pancreatic cancer.
Eek.
And it's near and dear to my heart. And it just happens to be a disease, and Mr. Trebek on television talks about it. Mm-hmm. He suffers from it. There's less than, I think 8 or 9% of people get to live 5 years. It is one of the mysteries of chemotherapy and diagnosis. And until we find a way to break that code of how to get into that pancreatic cell, and until we find a way to detect this disease early, we have made zero significant progress in treating pancreatic cancer in the last 40 years.
My guest is Dr. Victor Sternberg. He's, of course, a periodontist, but more importantly, an overall health talk show host, Politics in Your Health, the show he's done for years, now as a guest on our program. Doctor, speaking of pancreatic cancer and the like, why is it that we no, I'm out of order here. I had another question before that. There's a book out, and I forget the name of it. And the book is sort of damning. It says we have some better numbers for cancer only because early detection is better, but that we haven't made much progress in actually curing it after you have it.
Yeah. Well, we've made some cancers a chronic disease by managing the growth, but unfortunately, if you look at the statistics on the really fatal cancers, brain cancers, pancreatic cancers, bile duct cancers, we've made the most progress in the treatment of leukemia.
And the blood cancers, yes.
And there are drugs that seem to cause long periods of remission, if not cure, in the sarcomas and some of the more aggressive tumors of the stomach and the lungs. We have made not significant improvement in keeping these patients alive. The patients I know that survived lung cancer had it picked up accidentally, where they found went in for a chest x-ray. My God, they had something and they took it off. Once the disease becomes well established, it seems our abilities with chemotherapy, radiation, surgery does not cause a meaningful difference. They can extend life months, maybe a year or two, but the disease eventually, patient will succumb eventually.
Well, I read the book reviews.
Yeah,
I've read the book reviews.
Yeah.
A couple of very expensive chemicals, only drug treatment protocols, only extend life 2-3 weeks.
Yeah,
it's
and
not
they
worth
get approved because the fact that well, we have this. What the problem becomes if it's you or your wife or your family, and you say I'll do anything, even if it costs $500,000, as long as somebody else pays for it. Please do it. And that's a dilemma we have in medicine. The end of life, the heroic efforts to save life at the cost, which is astronomical, and the outcomes are minimal. It's a very difficult issue we face. And, I've talked repeatedly on the show about preventing the disease because that's the answer, not curing it. Preventing, we can prevent many more cancers than we cure. Just think about that. If we can prevent many more cancers than we cure.
Just getting people to stop smoking.
You start with smoking as the first step. They just let 500 people go from the company that makes Juul because they discovered that the sales are going down. And here's a perfect example. We've lost about 25 people have died from electronic cigarettes. And just think about this. If there was a drug on the market that caused 28 healthy people who took it for reasons that were not necessary, and they died, that drug would have been off the market in a second.
Yep.
And the politics of tobacco are one of the dark spots in our country's political and medical history. And the fact that we would approve a product, a device that could deliver something to the lungs at such a rate and have this injurious effect without testing it for a long period of time, in my opinion, is a scandal. But it's not the first, and you know that, Bob.
No, it's not, Doc. You know what I'm thinking about? You have now been on the air, I want to say six years, maybe 7 years, and you've had certain issues that you cared a great deal about. Of course, prevention being the hallmark, managing diabetes better, Dr. Bernstein's book, brushing your teeth better to getting a scan, an early scan for cancer of the lung. But more importantly, I digress there for a second. You've always talked about doctors need to have the conversation more about prevention. Have you seen in the 7 years you've been on the air any of these areas improve in a way that satisfies you, or are we at a dead stop?
No, I have not. And in fact, I just had a conversation with somebody who works at a large medical institution in Westchester County, where the director of medicine, this is hard to believe, was relieved from his position as director because he was spending too much time counseling patients on changing lifestyles and was not generating enough money for the institution.
Gee, that's
And
encouraging.
you just have to understand. Well, Bob, unfortunately, the production of money through procedures and medications and diagnosis is what keeps the medical machine running. When I go to the dental school, I look at these patients. I've said this before. I said, as the students present these enormous treatment plans at great expense, time, and discomfort to the patients, I said, have you ever handed the patient a toothbrush? So this week I said, I'll tell you what, before we start to treat this patient that needs extensive dental care, I want you to get a toothbrush from the clinic, and gave the patient a toothbrush. I said, show me how you brush your teeth. The patient had they were not brushing anything but just kind of polishing the enamel on their teeth. And I said, young man, this is why the woman has this problem. And if you don't get that what they do every day is more important than what you do, then you will just join the club. It's called repair and replace, medicate and operate. There's no glory. There's no money. You have to have a mindset that really cares about what happens to people, not what you do to them, but what you keep them from needing to have done. And we don't attract people into the health professions, at least we haven't in the past, that have that mindset. And the reimbursement system in our healthcare system is weighted toward the more invasive procedure, the greatest reimbursement. And if that doesn't change, nothing, in my opinion, will change.
Doctor, I want to thank you once again. We really need to talk. I look forward to the day when we fly open the phones and you're doing an hour of great public service radio. Dr. Victor Sternberg, if people want your periodontal skills, how do they get a hold of you, sir?
Just go to my website, Dr. Save My Teeth. Many of the things I talk about are discussed on that website, and we'll be happy to help you preserve your teeth, because saving your teeth not only saves you grief, but it saves you a lot of money.
It does.
In any event, we're more than happy to see you.
Doctor, it's great to hear you once again. Thank you so very much. It's like brain food. Thank you so much. Dr. Victor Sternberg, everyone.
You're welcome, Bob.
Great periodontist, but more importantly, a great talk show host as well. All right, we move ahead. We're coming up on 9 o'clock. Do a little research, reset, share the weather with you, and then we'll be back with Hezi Harris, and we're going to talk Yonkers politics and Yonkers news. Stay right there. It's 9 o'clock. I should make some noise, shouldn't I, Jake? Boop! It is 9 o'clock. Welcome once again to Radio Westchester. We are the station at the New Rochelle train station. I actually can speak. They do pay me to do that. Or actually, no, I pay myself, I guess is how you would put it. At any rate, it is 44. It dropped. It always gets colder. I don't know why, Jake. It gets colder before it gets hot. It's 44. They tell us we'll get up to 55 today. We're going to talk with Hezi. I'm waiting for him to call. Hezi Harris is our man about town. And anyway, he may have sent me a message, Let's see if he did. No. That's it. Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the one. Anthony sent me a text. Thank you very much, Anthony. I couldn't remember that they were Jehovah's Witnesses as well. Thank you so very much for that. There are other people that don't want to get a vaccinations. It's nuts. Okay, today's programs are brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And remember, it's Dominic's Fine Cigars that brought you your picks of the week. Licensed retailers they are, with a big selection. That's Dominic Cigars, a big selection including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, open 7 days. And I managed to do it again. I turn away, and they pull me back in, just like The Godfather. Don't worry, we got plans to fix that too. And let's take our last look at the weather. And our weather today is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. 44 now, getting up to 55 today. Sunny and windy. The temperature 53. The wind will be west-southwest, 15 to 30 miles an hour. That's right now, but it's going to ease up tonight. Clear skies. The temperature getting down to 34. And what we're going to do is call the guy that just tried to call us. This is coming to you live, not on film. Welcome to my world. I'm telling you, I'm getting really good at all this stuff. 4, 3, 2, 6. All righty, let's get him on. You're going to hear noise now, folks.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Hezzy Harris. This is Bob Marrone from Radio Westchester calling you back, sir. We missed you.
Well, I appreciate that. No problem. I was just texting you. If you wanted, you could call me, but I was going to keep trying. What a pleasure, though, Bob. Good morning.
It always is. Now, Hezzy is one of the reasons, and I always tell this to people, you, Bob Cox, the people over at Mount Vernon, Black Westchester Magazine. Mm-hmm. You guys are one of the reasons I do this. Your work, your local news work is so important. Now, Hezzy's the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. You also remember him from his days with the Westchester Guardian. He does the hard work, the slog work, the investigative work. He's as good as it gets, at least in my view. Welcome to the program, Hezzy.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm honored by being in the midst of such glorious people. I mean, really, Bob Cox, Black Westchester, that's fantastic. A.J. Woodson, whoa.
No, but the thing is,
a lot to live up to.
No, actually, you were one of the forerunners at this. You were out there before some of these other. Well, you and Bobby Cox were. All right, let's get to cases. You sent the story over the other day. You're working on other hot stories. What's your top story right now? The election's coming up, which is going to be a layup anyway.
Well, but this is the thing that's so weird. Only last week, or is it? Well, wait a minute. No, it was earlier this week. I interviewed what's his name, DiGiorgio, and who was running as a candidate against the mayor in the Yonkers mayoral race. And so Mario DiGiorgio did the interview. We spent about 45 minutes with him, and then it turns out I got inkling that there was a problem with his filings, with the amount of money that he received to the amount of money he spent. So the financials were out of order. And then I was able to reach out to the treasurer, who actually signed a letter and said, "I'm out of here," because the treasurer is supposed to get information of what checks are coming in, who it's from. They have to file for that, and if there are expenditures, they also have to file those and what they were being spent for. Well, evidently he didn't get that. The only way he could file the information that's required by New York State election law was to look at the bank report, which was always late. So it was on the 30th, 2 days ago, that he resigned his position and explained it, and then it just fell apart after that. And then other people started to mention, hey, there was like a barrel of that they would keep at these places where they would meet for fundraisers, and people were asked to put in cash, and there's no accounting for it. And election law doesn't permit you to get cash beyond $99 because you're supposed to designate where that money came from. Sometimes that's why you find in a lot of campaigns they ask for $99 or less, because that does not need to be reported.
Where does this
See
go
the games
now?
that are being played?
So what happens now? I mean, he wasn't going to win anyway.
Well, we knew that, of course. I mean, he doesn't have a chance in hell.
I mean,
and, I'm sorry, he may be a nice guy, but
the Christians,
it doesn't quite cut it.
The Christians had a better shot at the Lions going back a while back.
And yes, they did. They won every now and then.
And then occasionally there was
but
a Spartacus.
I know him. I know him when he was a Republican, became a Democrat in order to run against an incumbent Republican. This goes back many, many years, almost 20 years. and he's still at it. I don't know why. He's just a put up, staged character that, for whatever reasons, he likes the limelight. I don't know if there's a payoff. I'm not even suggesting that. I don't know why he does it.
You know,
But you
whenever
know what? In Yonkers, we legitimize candidates who are I don't know, deficient in many ways, but we make it seem as though there's a contest. There's no contest. Even when we ran the Democratic primary for Yonkers mayor, so of course we had the incumbent Mayor Mike Spano. Then we had Ivy Reeves, a nobody with no juice, and she never even said anything. And she said, "I want to keep it low," all kinds of crazy stuff. She was like a flower girl that went nowhere. And then who else did we have that was running? Which was Ivy Reeves, and there was a third character. I don't know. I can't even remember right now. This is how ineffective these people are.
you know, when you're talking about this particular race, why people run when they know they can't win. Do you remember the great play and movie Glengarry Glen Ross? When
Yes,
when
absolutely.
the character says to Jack Lemmon, the Nyborgs just like to talk to salesmen. They're not going to buy anything. It's kind of like that. They just want to run
So
for
true.
office. All righty.
So
So,
true.
how is early voting going in Yonkers? A lot of people showing up at the polls. Do you know?
I don't know. I only was looking at a few contests, and I studied a few of them. I had some information. Can't tell you which one, but it in certain sections it's doing well one way or the other. But I don't think it's hot and heavy. I mean,
No.
there's talk about it, but I don't think it's going anywhere. It's very, very mild, and then there were problems in Yonkers. We have two major libraries, one on the west side, one on toward the center of the city. So the center one is the Will Library, which is fantastic off of Central Avenue. They have a parking lot adjacent to the library, so it's easy to get to and do what you have to do, and you could get out. It's free parking. And on the other side, on the west side, you had the Riverfront Library. Except in the very beginning, they were both supposed to have equipment for this purpose. And then we found out later, after the announcement, that the Will Library didn't have that. So they didn't get the equipment, so they couldn't function. But then I heard at the last moment that they did get the equipment. But, these are the sort of things that dissuade people from even bothering.
I
So I don't think
know
it was on
that.
purpose. It just is.
The other day we saw coming out of your website and other outlets that the city's looking to build some new schools and such.
Yeah, $100 million, no less.
Where are they getting these shekels from?
Well, they're not. It's just BS. Look, we don't have. Well, let's start off what we do have, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And which really points out that we don't have.
This is priceless, folks.
This is really good stuff. It's just amazing. We had a lot of football teams in our high schools.
Yes,
quite a few. But then, times got rough, and it was difficult to maintain all of that. So it was consolidated. Instead of having, I don't know how many schools we had in high schools, I think we have 8. They consolidated that into only 2. Each of those football teams were underwritten by either the police department, the Yonkers Police Department, or the Yonkers Fire Department. So so those were the 2. Then a lot of kids want to try out for football, but if you don't have the rudiment, you may have the passion, you may have the physique, you may even have the grades to qualify. But you don't know the moves, you don't know what to do, how to do, where to go, how to work in a team, and so on. So this is training. That costs money. It costs $300 per child who would qualify. We had 106 people who had every other qualification except they didn't have the course. So that would have been 106 times 300. So it's over $30,000. Guess what? we didn't have $30,000 to do this
Mm-hmm.
at all. So guess how that got that funded? It was funded through donations.
Good grief.
Donations out of the blue, last moment, saved by the skin of their teeth, and over $30,000 was donated. I know by whom, and it's unbelievable. These are like cash cows, people who want to do the right thing for the city because their heritage goes back, not for a particular ethnic group, but just heritage goes back to when the schools helped them become who they are today, and they're successful. But we don't even have $30,000. So here, all of a sudden, the mayor says, "I'm going to build a school, $100,000, and we're not going to wait for the state to give us any money because they're not giving it to us. So we're going to do it." Oh, great!
But he's going to have to
bond. Where's the money coming from?
Where?
Well, I don't think we're going to get bonding for $100 million. If that's what they want to do. But you have to understand, if the state were to invest in Yonkers to build another school, they would only reimburse us to the tune of about 70% of the cost of a building. Now, they have other places in the state that get a larger increase, a larger payout from the state that picks up the tab. But if 70% we have to pay for it, I mean 70 million instead of 100 million, how do we make up that $30 million differential? We don't. So that means it's going to come out of the pocket of the taxpayer, besides the state taxpayer. And for every $3 million that we become burdened by as a debt, is equivalent to a 1% increase in our taxes. So 30 million divided by 3 is exactly a 10% pay increase. Yeah. How the hell are we going to even get that through the legislature to approve it when we're supposed to stay under the 2% gap, increase per year?
You can't.
How does that work? Well, there you go. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smart Man, because that's the way it is.
Let me remind people.
We don't have accountants. I didn't know you were an accountant.
Hold on.
We don't have accountants in Yonkers.
My guest is the editor-in-chief and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. He's been in the newspaper business in our county for a while now. Also,
20 years.
Well, no, you've a little more than 1 year. He was also the
20.
I was like, okay, yeah. I thought you said 1 year.
An old man.
20 years. Hey, look, I'm just saying. I think you and I are only days apart, so let's leave it alone.
I think so.
Good grief.
Exactly.
But I want people to read your newspaper. And one of the reasons I do is that it is content rich. There are stories. It's not just a couple of ads and then a list of who's dancing the cha-cha in Yonkers nightclubs.
Actually, I'd like to know.
You would, wouldn't you? And now, when people they just go right to the YonkersTribune.com and it's all there. What else are you working on, Hezi Harris? There are a couple of things I want to ask you about too, but I want to be sure I cover your headlines first.
Well, we had to really investigate, and it took about 6 weeks to investigate a major incident, a tragic incident, and that was from the days when we had the River Fest. We have a River Fest. It's a waterfront event. About 12, 13,000, 15,000 people show up every year. It's the 27th incarnation, only about 6 weeks ago. And it's supposed to be a celebration. Well, it was, and it was well attended. Music, food, just commiserating with friends, having a good time. But then it turns out that the mayor, the acting police commissioner at the time, the PBA president, and the person who owned the Yonkers Brewery, who is a councilman, they all ended up going to the Yonkers Brewery, and they were drinking, because that's what one does. You drink, and you also have salty food, and that's what they did. And it turns out the guy that was with them was the deputy communications director for the mayor. Well, eventually they left at different times, and the Akeem, who was the one that got into a crash, he ended up going to a pickup joint on Yonkers Avenue, and that's where he was. And then we find out later, I don't know exactly at what time, the mayor too was there. And we had witnesses that told us that, and no nefarious reason, so I hope people don't go the wrong way.
Okay.
But our witness saw the two of them in the men's room, probably taking a piss, no big deal. And I didn't want to push that issue any further. I didn't need to know more. I just needed to know where they were and where they were. And that happened between 12:30 in the morning on Sunday and 1:30 in the morning on Sunday. Eventually, Akeem leaves. We don't know where he went, but he comes back 2 hours later. So that makes it from 1:30 to about 3:30. He was hanging around there till about 4:30, and then he departs and heads north. But instead of going in the right on the right in the correct side of the Central Avenue, he makes an immediate turn from Yonkers Avenue and goes and travels north on a southbound road, designated road. So he got into, I don't know how he drove for 2 miles to get to Palmer Road, but he did. And that's when he crashed into the guy that was coming down from Wapacher. And
it's quite a story.
The thing that's really disgusting about it is that, of course, Akeem was very badly hurt. He was in a little BMW, and the other guy was in a 2003 Chevy. I think it was a Chevy. I forgot the name of it, but whatever. He broke his leg, and then there were reports that the police said that, well, they didn't smell any alcohol on Akeem's breath. Oh, give me a break. Nobody says that on the air, but they did because they're trying to cover it up. They also didn't follow protocol. They didn't measure exactly where the skid marks were. They didn't take the photos. They didn't do a lot of things they're supposed to do because that's Yonkers for you. And you know what? It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks. I tracked this whole thing down. It would have come out earlier if I would have able to put all the facts together, which I did in the article. But I didn't. Nobody said a word about it. It was supposed to be hidden.
Well, it's not hidden now. It's out there, and you're doing the role of the press. Have you requested comment from any of the principals?
Well, they deny it. They deny everything.
That it didn't happen.
Nothing happened. That's the way Yonkers is.
Well, what about the car accident? I mean, that's empirical. We know it happened. It's probably.
Of course, it happened. The district attorney, I would presume, is following this up. I got wind from the hospital that he was originally in, and somebody told me, hey, they took a blood sample because that's what's required by the law. So this blood was taken, so they know if he was DUI or any other way.
Wow.
You know, they play a game. If you remember, a couple of years ago, there was a guy who was at Fogarty's in Bronxville, was drunk as a skunk, and it was Valentine's Day, and he left and went home. On his way home, he crashed into a fire truck. Bonkers. A guy by the name of Fernandez. Nobody gave a hoot about the fire truck drivers and the guys that in the truck, the trauma that they suffered. But this guy was drunk, and he was hanging around with people who were also in the police department. Nobody wanted to ever admit who they were. I knew who they were, but it didn't matter because they were not the issue. But one thing that's interesting in Yonkers, you can get drunk, pissed drunk in front of everybody, and nobody will say, you know what? Those keys are mine. You're never going to leave this door until I get the keys. And if I with a surgery that I had to go through, I would knock these people to the floor. There's no reason why you would let somebody leave drunk.
So all they did was deny.
And that's what happened.
Wow.
Deny.
It is 9:21. We're talking with Hezi Harris, the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. What else you got before I take you out of Yonkers?
Well, take me out of Yonkers. I need a break.
I do. Yeah, you do need a break. All right. We heard. What is your take on the county announced a couple of days ago that, the numbers are coming in and they're going to be able to put together a bit of a tax cut, at least a small reduction in the levy. Now, again, as I was talking with some caller earlier today, this comes after they also raised the sales tax, one on the face of it, but to those people, it's like a 12% increase. They've raised it in one hand, but in the other hand, for overall, it seems to be doing what was intended. What's your take on how the county's doing, the new county executive, et cetera? Not so new anymore, 2 years.
I think he's doing exactly what everybody else in politics has been doing. I feel that there's a lot of visuals, a lot of optics that are taking place. He's here, he's there, he's everywhere.
Well, that's always been the case with George Latimer, sure.
Yeah, but it's getting to be the norm in politics when the essence and full explanations is just not there. And then there's also the tendency for people to just coalesce amongst each other, another kumbaya moment where they all repeat exactly the same thing. So there is no discussion and there's no cerebral gravitas to what's being discussed. And instead of just saying, well, this is good, you should also, if you're logically minded, you would say, this is what we intend to do. This is what we expect it will resolve. And at the same time, we understand that some people will find it really too onerous for them, and it will be difficult for them. Okay, so even though you have to go a certain way, just deal with every issue. What's the problem? Is it that complex? It's just one stupid sentence, and that's the problem. Because they only speak of it in glorious terms, and the birds are chirping, and the balloons are flying, and everyone's having a wonderful moment. And now, evidently, it seems that George Latimer, the county executive, is realizing, well, maybe we didn't have to go that far. Maybe we could reduce it a little bit, which will dampen the result. Those people, the naysayers, will say, okay, well, thank you for at least listening to us. So it makes sense. That was a good move from his perspective, I think.
Let's move.
And if we spend too much, then if we're asking for too much, then let us push it back. At least he had the sensibility to do that. Because a lot of places would say, oh, no, we did it already. They're going to have to get used to it. And this way we won't have to ask for an increase 5 years down the road.
We're talking with Hezi Aris. I want to move to one of my favorite places, and hopefully
Mount Vernon.
Yes, hopefully you've taken your medication.
I'm good. I'm good with Mount Vernon.
You know what my issue is with Mount Vernon, and even with the current candidates, although at least Sean Patterson Howard. And we look at what they say and what they do, and we look at the history in this city, but we also look at our interactions with them. And how do you explain Andre Wallace blowing off 2 or 3 free hours on the radio and not even calling us back to tell us it was canceled? Things like that. In other words, a city that has a reputation, and it's to her credit, when I called Sean Patterson Howard out on this, it didn't happen again. But if they don't return calls or they don't make appointments and they don't make it easy to get a hold of them, what makes them think that the public's going to trust them when they get in office?
Well, they don't. I've heard you speaking about this issue before, and you're right. And I think one of the things that was really quite compelling is that you said if you can't even get these people's phone number when you go to their website, you're not going to be able to get anybody when they become elected or if they ever get elected. And it's a very valid point. And yet, every time it comes around to an election time period, they forget, and they're so full of themselves they think they can do it on their own.
Well,
look, what's his name? Andre Wallace has an opportunity. I don't know if it'll amount to anything, but he had an opportunity to be a lot more ingratiating and more welcoming of more people. He could have built a much larger tent so that he could have included a lot more, including the press if he had any brains, but he didn't. And I remember I went to see him specifically. This was before he became just because he had just become the acting mayor.
Yes.
And I went to see him. It was a Friday afternoon. We had set an appointment for 3:00 in the afternoon, and because I did my radio show, and I needed to make sure I could get there in time, and didn't want to keep him waiting. But when I got there, I had to wait till 5:30 at night in order to talk to him, and we spent 45 minutes.
Well, that's good.
He did absolutely not. No, it's not good because he didn't hear a word.
Oh.
And you know what? Everything that I told him to watch out for the betterment of the city, he refused to honor because he was too simple-minded to figure it out. His problem is exactly the same problem that we had under Richard Thomas. He didn't listen. He was his own man. He didn't know how to delegate. He was a micromanager, and guess what? That's a failure.
You
from
know,
the very beginning.
And one of the reasons I even bring these things up, because people may say, well, gee, these guys are upset that the way they got treated by the candidate.
Upset.
No, but no,
upset.
I know you're not. No, but my point is this, that it opens up a tiny window into a general pattern of dysfunction in that city. It's almost like
disrespect.
It's a whole different set of rules in Mount Vernon. And I said today during one of my comments with someone, if any city ever needed a real true new broom, but this is where I go for on your expertise, how do you even get a new broom when the party in power and the people in White Plains and Reggie Lafayette and everybody runs it, they're such an entrenched part of the old guard? How does any new voice, for example, like we know that Richard wasn't perfect, but how do we know how much the powers that be in White Plains wanted him blown out of the water to the extent that he had good intentions? We don't know.
But you know what? That is not the issue. First of all, Reggie Lafayette, he's the Westchester County chairman.
He's
of
the
Democratic
top
Party.
yes.
And you got Colty on the other side, the Republican guy. So, but the point is that they saw something in Richard Thomas, and he had so-called experience, but he fibbed a great deal. So his resume of accomplishment was just vacuous. There was nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a good relationship with the governor. He didn't work there as much as he claimed he did. You know what? I don't know what he learned at NYU. It all sounded good. It looked perfect. A beautiful, good-looking black man, you know, in a predominantly black city, and there was so much promise. You know what? It wasn't Reggie Lafayette that undermined him.
Oh no!
And it didn't matter even if he tried.
No, I'm not suggesting. My point was, I hear you, but what
were you trying to say then?
No. What I'm trying to say is what you just said. I understood, but irrespective of that, no, you're on the money. But what I'm trying to get at is, even had he had all the goods, my gut always was that anyone who wants to go in that city, in other words, even a broken clock's right twice a day. Whenever Richard tried to look into the corruption there, and this is separate from what his faults, the ceiling came down on him. And what I'm saying is...
Wait a minute. He brought the ceiling down on himself.
No, yes, but I'm talking about with respect to that, though.
He aligned himself with crooks.
Yeah, no, I understand.
He aligned himself with people who undermined him, and he became their BITCH.
Okay, well, I understand that.
$50,000.
I do. I understand that. So what I'm really asking you is, then let me rephrase the question, Your Honor.
Okay.
If someone, no, don't be sorry, because we're scratching and clawing our way to the same place. I just have this gut feeling that and we'll call him John Doe or Jane Doe, and comes in there and says, I'm going to find out once and for all who gave out all these loans out of the IDA for no interest, or that doesn't have to be paid back for 50 years, or who dumped all the dirt at Memorial Field. And
I'll tell you who.
Hold on.
I'll tell you who.
I'm going to clean out every damn commissioner and put in new commissioners, and we're going to run an honest city. I worry that person might get shot. What I'm saying is, I don't trust the whole infrastructure in this county to deal with somebody trying to get real in Mount Vernon.
Look, if I would tend to suggest to the listeners that you're a credible guy and you're going to follow the rules. I can't attest 100% because I don't know you that well, and even if I did, even if we were married, I would never really know exactly what the other person is doing. But I know
Right.
I could tell you about me.
Yes.
I am not for sale.
Right.
The bottom line is this: I deal from a one perspective. It's an ethical
I know.
perspective. That's how I was raised,
That's why
and
you're
you
here.
know what? It's that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm pertinent. Now, in a situation like that, you ask, well, where did the money go from the IDA? I'll tell you at least one client that I know that got money from the IDA, but I was stupid. I got money from the IDA. I didn't know it was coming from them. The city of Mount Vernon, actually engaged me as an outlet for some of their advertising.
Oh,
I didn't question where the money was going
of
to come
course. You
from.
get a
I
check, you
didn't
get a
say,
check.
well,
Hmm.
I got a check. I looked at the check before it was deposited, and it said it was the Mount Vernon IDA. It never dawned on me that that would be an inappropriate place from which to get the money. I never worked with Mount Vernon. I didn't ever see anything that came from them. Should it have come from a different department? Probably, but they didn't do it that way. They were undermining the process under Richard Thomas's administration because they were trying to undermine someone else, and that was the comptroller,
Hmm.
Deborah Reynolds. And Deborah Reynolds, as you once said, she could either be, the bad one or the good one. She was actually the good one
Okay.
because she was the one that said, "Show me what you paid for."
She's
They would
absolutely right.
never show her.
Now, what about the years
And
before? What about all the money in the IDA that there were like all these ridiculous
it's
loans?
gone. It's gone. Well, $4 million was sitting in that account. They didn't give me $4 million.
No,
I think I got about $1,000.
you and I'd be in
The point
Mexico
is,
right now drinking pina coladas
yeah,
if you.
absolutely. And I'm not a pina colada drinker, but I will go there. I'll be happy to be there with you. So, but that's the point. The point is that if people want to corrupt the system, they can. And if you don't hire people who do their job and they don't have to answer to a higher authority, which means whoever is in charge, then that's what you get. And guess what? Everybody wants to do the right job. They want to be recognized for doing the right job, but government and the mechanisms don't allow you to.
No, they don't.
You could get fired for just looking at it the wrong way.
And then, of course, the political system doesn't vet people for their executive skills. And if any place on the planet needs executive
Hey,
skills,
you know
it's
what?
Mount Vernon.
It's interesting. There's a race. I don't have to mention people's name. I'm going to write about it, but I can if you want. It doesn't really make a difference. What matters is, like, I know that there's a race. It's coming up. It'll be in November, and November 5 is when everyone will take the vote. Can you imagine somebody? Actually, it doesn't matter. I should tell you exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a scoop before I even write it, which is really great. So it turns out, that we have a race in the legislature for Westchester County Board legislator.
Yes.
We have an incumbent, Gordon Burroughs.
Mhm.
We also have a challenger who is a New Age Democrat, Ruth Walters.
Yes.
Now, isn't it interesting? And this is one of your favorite guys, no less. John Murtaugh.
Yes.
John Murtaugh is a commentator on
Yes.
your show quite often,
Yes.
on News 12 and other places.
Mhm.
Very well respected. He was on the city council. I think he was even a majority leader in the Yonkers City Council.
He ran
was
for
a
mayor.
Republican. He ran for mayor, and so on. So he's got the bona fides, which is great. But here he is, a Republican who is not supporting a Republican because he doesn't like Gordon Burroughs, and so he's going to support Ruth Walter, which is really fascinating. And she is as left as you can become. Some people call her not even a left-wing Democrat, but or a socialist. They call her a communist. But that's fine. That's people's own decision. But what's interesting is Ruth Walter, for example, she claims that she believes in trimester abortions. I personally don't, but that has nothing to do with the issue. What does matter is that John and his wife are holding a gathering on Monday to raise money and awareness of Ruth Walter's campaign. And so, well, first of all, why would you be raising money on a Monday when you can't do anything with the money on Monday because the election is on Tuesday? And you know what? Even press releases are not permitted in the press before the election. I think within 72 hours
72.
Before an election.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So what's the point of it? But this is more important than anything else. John's wife teaches at a Catholic school.
Yes.
How does that fit? How do those two things fit? I believe in trimester abortions and I don't, on the other hand. So she's making believe she's someone different. Then, I don't know if you heard about this incident. It turns out Reggie Lafayette, the Westchester County Board Democratic chairman,
aforementioned,
has a son. I don't know. I never met the son. Didn't know had a son. Didn't matter, but he has a son. And guess what? That son was working on the Ruth Walters campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was supposed to be paid. He wasn't paid. He told his dad. He told her. He said, "You got to pay me." She didn't pay him. So he told his dad, and his dad called up Ruth, and he said, "You owe my son money. You better pay." She said, "Well, send him over. Tell him to come over to my house." So he comes over to the house. She sees a black man in the window at the door. She calls up the Bronxville Police Department.
You're kidding.
Why? She owed him the money. What kind of a racist pig
but let me ask you something.
In this day and age,
if he worked for her,
permitted.
how come she didn't recognize him if he worked for her, has he?
I don't know why she didn't recognize him. She saw a black man. She didn't see people.
She lives in Bronxville.
That's what it boils down to. Look, I know what you look like. What am I going to do? Not see you? What am I going to see something else? If she knows this guy who worked for her, which she does know, she even spoke to him, she knew him, she was expecting him to show up at her house, and yet when he showed up, he was a black man that scared the bejesus out of her.
But there are some.
The only thing she could do was call up the Bronxville police.
How did you manage to get this level of information, and how do you know that she saw a black man and reacted? Hello.
The point is, I hear you. First of all, it's not for. I don't tell anybody where my sources are.
Oh no, but okay,
okay.
That
because
okay,
I'm
it was
all
a
over
source.
The county. I'm all over the county, and that's because I learned my trade at the debauchery of Yonkers.
At the
debauchery. They would never give me any information, and so because of that, I said,
okay, let's go back to this
because I want to, and therefore I'm going to run rings around all of them, and I do.
I know you do, but now how do you have somebody?
Let's say I can't tell you. All I know is this. I know that Reggie's son went to her door. I don't know why would she call if she didn't want to open the door. Then why would she? Then she didn't have to. Why is it that she would call the Bronxville Police Department that there was a black man in there and she was afraid, and that's all she saw.
Now,
I can't tell you why she saw that. All I know is that her conduct, I'm not contemplating this, her conduct was, you can check with the Bronxville Police Department, they must have a record. I didn't call them up.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, I'm not doubting your veracity.
The police were there.
I'm not doubting your veracity even a little bit. What I'm also trying to figure out.
I'm not concerned. You could doubt me all you want.
No, I'm
I
not.
Have an answer
I'm not. But what I'm asking is too, and it makes me scratch my head about her. You have someone on your payroll. Why don't you pay them? It's ridiculous. Or was it?
Well, that's number one. But number two, the bigotry is really outrageous. I'm sorry. Let me put it to you this way. A lot of people want to demonize certain districts and certain areas, and certain towns, and so on. I'm not looking for that. But you know what? It runs against my mindset. And I'm as conservative on one hand and also liberal on the other hand.
You know.
At the same time, I don't expect people to call up the police because there's a black man in front of the door. If you don't want to do anything with that person, you don't have to answer the door.
But
You
yet,
could always say, I wasn't there.
but yet she said have him come over the house. Makes no sense. Now that election's coming up in a week too. She must. My guess
Coming
is
up on Tuesday.
You know what I can deduce? Maybe one of the reasons they're raising money is she probably has campaign debts. She probably didn't have any money, ostensibly, to pay this guy.
Well, that's a logical conclusion, but that's what it is. Because otherwise, you can't use the money for anything else. You can't throw it into your account and say, well, we're going to take out more ads, or we're going to put up another poster, or we're going to pay people to get out the vote. No, it doesn't work that way.
The other fun issue
the
is
point
why
is it's over.
Why John's not supporting
He's
a fellow
going nowhere
Republican.
anyway. It doesn't matter. It's almost a waste of time. But I find it really duplicitous for her to make believe that she is someone that she's not. She's a racist, and she's also got other issues as well. And the point is that if she was a credible human being, she wouldn't be coming to John Murtaugh's house with his wife and saying, hey, you may be a teacher in a Catholic school, but I don't give a hoot. Because her policies are completely different.
Well,
but I can guarantee you that most people don't know that she's for trimester abortions.
Why? This particular candidate is for third trimester abortion.
That's exactly right.
People need
and
to
there
know
are
that.
others as well, but the point is she doesn't say that.
Wow.
But that's exactly what she is, and she's known for it.
It's 9:43. I did want to ask you about one other. Now, I know you usually
already
leave an early out.
9:43. Where does the time go?
It always flies when you're having fun. My guest is Hezi Aris. He's the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. Now, you must get some feedback, or people inquire about all the development here in New Rochelle. We're starting to get a little bit of pushback from people saying, "My God, all this development. What is it going to cost? Blah 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 blah." And we've learned in some of our own work that, well, they did underestimate, or we don't know exactly yet. We won't know until the budget comes out. But there has been some underestimation of infrastructure work that's going to require a tax or an extra added charge in their water bills. But what do you hear about the development here? I mean, for those of us where I sit, it looks like a wonderful thing, and we're going to have all kinds of more money to spend downtown and a new downtown. But then there's not enough affordable housing. There's gentrification. What do you hear from your perch?
Well, I don't follow New Rochelle as much because I know Bob Cox is there, and I don't need to step into a turf that I feel is getting a respectable reporting.
Sure.
And so I don't pay as much attention as I would normally. And to be honest with you, a few years ago, I just didn't have that capacity.
Sure.
I do have a lot more now because I keep spreading myself beyond, but that takes a lot of time and effort
to
cultivate people and so on, and it's also a very expensive endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
So look, the problem with development is that it's not clear. The people who actually work on it don't explain. And the point is that if there is going to be a need for infrastructure enhancements, as you suggest, or is it being suggested now, should have been there before there was a vote of approval. But when you look at the boards of people who should be knowledgeable in this, let's face it, they're not. And they're not just like the same people that we elect into office. They're not executives that know how to run a place, or they get corrupt by their own inequities or their own biases. And that's the problem. And we need to find a better way of deciphering who knows what. And we shouldn't just be electing people to boards when they don't have a clue. Do you know how many people I can tell you? I can even name them, but there's no reason to. They're on the board. To do what? What do they know? Oh, just one thing. We used to have one guy, for example, who for 3 years had been suffering from dementia on the Yonkers Board of Education Board of Trustees. 3 years, mind you.
You're kidding me.
Exceptional mind before this thing happened.
Got another
They placed him on the board. They placed him on the board knowing full well that he was suffering from dementia. But guess what? The beauty of this guy was that when they needed him to raise his hand in unison for whatever they wanted, he was quick to do it because he was told to do it. And that's what he was good for. And you know what? It's as disgusting as I just told you. And I know who these people were. This man had a brilliant image, and at the end, he was just a vegetable.
That's
That's not his
unfortunate.
fault.
That's
But
unfortunate.
what's unfortunate is that the people on the board of education, board of trustees, permitted it
I wonder who
rather than
got.
get somebody credible.
I wonder who the chairperson was of that committee. They should have been dealing with that, quite frankly. One
No,
more.
I think you're wrong. It's not the chairman. It's the mayor.
Well,
The
oh
mayor
yes,
of the city
because
of
they make those appointments.
Yonkers is the one that makes those decisions. It's his board. It's
But
his appointment. He appointed this bozo. It's not that the chairman could do anything about it or the president of the board.
mhm.
It was the mayor that actually appointed these people, and everybody on that board is appointed by the mayor. Some are good, and some are just absolutely deficient. And
Wow.
that particular guy was.
Live and learn. Are you
Well,
familiar
he's
here?
gone now.
Are you familiar here in New Rochelle with the issues surrounding the new? In fact, she took office today. The new superintendent of schools here. She's one of the three women that sued Carranza in New York City for reverse discrimination. Now,
I've heard you talk about it, but and I think she's being represented by a legal firm.
yes,
On that, I don't have enough information. I think the guy that is representing her is from New Rochelle originally. He was a council member, right?
yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
that's the
So,
on the other side. Yeah, I believe, but no, I don't know if she's being represented by a council member. I can't sustain that. I'm not sure about that.
it was a lawyer.
Yeah.
Whatever. I haven't followed that closely enough because I figured again it was too convoluted
Yeah.
for me
Plus, yeah,
to
Bobby
wrap
and I are
myself
both.
around. Because
Bob and I have both
I've been
been on that.
focusing more on Yonkers and Mount Vernon.
Bob and I have both been doing that. All right, so let's go down. Before
Yeah.
you go, we already know who's going to be the mayor in Mount Vernon. Now, about the race you just discussed, that's an interesting race between Walters and the incumbent.
Oh, and
Who wins
yeah,
that?
and Gordon Burroughs.
Gordon Burroughs.
Say that again.
Who wins that?
I think it's Gordon Burroughs for a particular reason more than anything else.
Name
And
name
that
recognition.
reason is the demographics. That particular legislative district is combines parts of Yonkers and also Bronxville. Between these two communities, they're very, very similar. They're first of all older. They're over 55. They've been around, very successful, most of them. So there's no need for some sort of subsidized housing in any of those areas. And they tend to be more conservative, even though they may be liberal on other points, but they're more conservative on other issues and very, very engaged. Gordon Burroughs, I think, has been there, 18 years?
Something like that.
He served the community well. And I don't think that he's going to be abandoned for someone that is being regarded as a communist, not even a socialist. That's how far she goes to the left. And that's not going to fly in that district.
No,
Maybe
certainly
the
not.
other districts where it would fly. She's also quite aloof, and she's not an ingratiating character. I was thrilled when she changed her hairstyle and new pair of glasses, and she looked less foreboding than before.
Why don't you tell me how you really feel, Essie? All right.
I pay attention to all this
Okay, now another race. Mount Vernon, handicap that one. I've got a sports handicapper right here. I should have given it to him, but I don't want to say it because I've had the candidates on. I mean, I think Sean's going to win. No, I can't say that. I think she's going to win. I won't take sides in it. But who do you think is going to win that race?
I think it's leaning to Sean Patterson Howard. I think people are looking for someone that they believe in. She has a great reputation at the Mount Vernon as well as the YMCA in Yonkers. And so she's got a good reputation. She has an ability to express ideas. At times I think they're a little bit empty. and not fully explanatory. Her language skills are good, but they're
Hey,
not always on the mark.
Hey, if I can I just have some fun here? Let me be the
Sure.
snarky one. But
Sure.
for someone running for office to say something that's a little empty, that qualifies her right there. Sorry.
Well, but she's running as a new type of politician.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
So
No, I know.
I can only wish her well because I'm tired of the Andre Wallace games, the micromanagement, the lack of ability for people to excel in their job because there's always somebody watching over them. And if they're no good at the job, then tell them to get out and get somebody who can do the job. Or if you can't fire them, then demote them to something less important and elevate people who can do the job. And that's how you change the demeanor and character of a city or even a company. And that's what it's all about.
Well, that's what they need in that town for certain. Any other races you want to comment on before I know you have a 10 o'clock appointment, so I'll get you out a little
No,
early.
I don't.
Oh, not today? Good.
Today I'm not going to be doing that because I'm so backlogged and there's so much to write that I told people that we're not going to do it. And my guests normally for this Friday, we switch them till next week.
Let me share a beef then. Let's you and I commiserate as people who do this. As you've said, the kind of work that you do, Bob Cox does, I do, preparing. There are most of the people in my life, even people who should know better, think that we just show up and know this stuff. They don't know that we've had to talk to people. We've had to, as you said before, develop sources. We've had to go behind the scenes. We've had to read everything we can get our hands on. We're on the phone constantly. We've got to read 1,000 things. People think that I just come in here and sit down and let's chit chat. My God, no.
No.
And there's so much work after we're off the air, or like
once you studied.
Yeah,
I've been hearing you. You've been studied. You study the issues. Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people think we do. It's the end product that defines us. It takes many, many years of credible work, as you well know, and that's why you're respected for what you do. And it takes time and effort. But they applaud, even if they want to be derogatory of you for some whatever.
Well, it's never derogatory. It's they take for granted that you're free now. Look, it's 3 PM. You don't have anything to do. Wow, you crazy?
No, but that has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
They want you to do a credible job during the hours that you're doing the work.
Right.
And that's the reason you're getting people who call you, including some people from the old radio station. One of them was Denise Ward. I heard her yesterday.
Yeah, I was surprised she called.
But the point is, that's begotten literally because of credibility, not because they like you, because you're credible. You're not selling your good looks, Mr. Marrone, though you are.
My good looks are not going to make.
And you got hair as opposed to me. So the point of it all is that it's because of your work.
But do you know now that you brought up my looks? Do you know the abuse I'm going to get? People are tripping to get to their phones. But thank you for that. But no, it's just something that one of the reasons I have such a regard. Now as soon as I knew I had this, I called you and Bob Cox and others very quickly because I wanted to get the people who were real involved. And I have to tell you, Hezi, I've always admired what you do. I still do. You're a rare breed, a courageous journalist. Please keep at it. And thank you for spending time with us today. And we'll talk to you again next week.
My pleasure. Be well.
You too. Hezi Harris, everyone, check it out. The Yonkers Tribune. And he is as real as I am suggesting that he is. I'm looking at the weather here one last time. It is now up to, it's 53. No, that's going to be the high. It's only 45. 53 the high today, sunny all day. Tomorrow, sun and clouds of 52, getting down to 38 at night. And then Sunday, more sun, some clouds, but mostly sunshine, 51 getting down to 35 in the evening. We have a lot of people to thank. Of course, I'm going to ask Jake one more time to go over his picks, because some of you said, Bob, I missed it. I didn't get the picks. I want to know. He's going to make me rich. And we really want you to do that. And we remind you, this week's football picks are brought to you by Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, open 7 days. We bring you Jake's picks. Well, Jake, tell them like it is.
Patriots favored by 3.5 on the road against the Ravens. Lions on the road getting 2 against the Raiders. The Dolphins at home getting 3 against the dreadful Jets. Cowboys favored by 7 Monday night at Giants Stadium.
That's it. And your lock
Your
of
picks.
the week?
The lock, Patriots.
Yes.
Favored by 3.5 Sunday night on the road against the Ravens.
They're gonna have birds for supper. They're gonna stuff those ravens and eat them one at a time.
I'll give you a score.
Go ahead.
24-7.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a score. 35 to 14. You heard it right here, folks. I'm probably
We
going to
will
bet
see
on
on
myself.
Monday.
All righty, let's go over and say thank you to a few people. Thank you very much. First of all, Jake Schaefer. I want to thank our sponsors. You too. I want to thank our sponsors today. The United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management and Aging Issues Radio, and we'll be coming at you with another show with them on Monday. The law firm of Pena and Khan, Dominic Cigars, who bring you those picks of the week, and Plug in Virtual Reality. We can bring virtual reality out to you, or you can come here and we will give you that experience at night. We have all kinds of goodies. If you call us at 914-727-2726, 914-272-726, we can bring it out to you. So that's plug-in virtual reality. All righty. Thank you so much for listening. We're taking a look at Monday. We'll be joined by Mike Duffy, George Latimer. Now, it's Bramson's kicking the can, but we're not putting any of the people on next week who are candidates. So we won't be talking with Mr. Bramson. We'll be filling that time. We also will be talking with Ron. No, we can't talk with Ron Belmont. He's running for office as well. So we'll have a whole new lineup for Monday. Let's leave it at that. This is the one, the only Radio Westchester. We are live at the New Rochelle train station. And look at this. All righty. We've got our theme music. You've been listening to Radio Westchester, Marrone in the Morning. I am Bob Marrone. Thank you so much for listening. The sun is shining. We're going to see you again on Monday, and also following the morning show, we will have a show featuring Aging Issues Radio. We have a lot more to tell you about, and we have a couple more upgrades to do. So we're building. We're getting bigger and better. And if you have any ideas or people you'd like to hear on the radio, or segments you'd like to see, or things you'd like to see changed or added, you give us an email at bob@radiowestchester.com. That's bob@radiowestchester.com. I'm Bob Marrone. Thank you for listening. It's 10 o'clock.